All right, we return to open meeting tonight. We'll start with item 5, and we will ask Miss Wendy Kraft to come up and introduce our pledge leader.
Good evening. It is with great honor that I introduce you to an awesome fourth grader at Hart Elementary. This is Luke Havens, and he is in Mrs. Mills' homeroom, and he has an older sister who graduated from Lovejoy High School last year, the class of 2022, Miss Katie, and then he also has a brother who is a junior who is in the band as well. And Luke is Mr. Athlete. He loves to play baseball, basketball, football. He enjoys hunting, fishing, and his favorite subjects are science and reading. But what I admire most about Luke is he is this amazing, quiet leader, and he was always doing the right thing, even when no one's watching, but he also helps his friends do the right thing and make good choices. So we are very proud of him, and he is going to do the pledges for us tonight.
Please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the Texas Pledge. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Great job, Mr. Havens. All right, Mr. Parker, item 6A, staff recognitions.
Good evening. We have a couple of Lovejoy team members that are a vital part of what we do for kids in this district, and I'm going to ask Coach Ross to introduce these two individuals so we can recognize them for their great commitment that they provide for our students.
It's my honor to do this. I need Carly Littlefield, Logan Kelly to come up here. I've already talked to him. I said, is it okay if I just bring you guys up here together, because they're such an incredible team that it's really fitting that they've won this award together. I think some people don't understand that they won this separately. So these two right here were the district coaches of the year, and then they were the regional male coach of the year and female coach of the year, which immediately nominated them for the first ever state coach of the year. And we have both state coaches of the year right here in Lovejoy. Isn't that incredible? I reminded them they're not done, because now they have both been nominated for National Coach of the Year because of this award. And their teamwork, everybody, we see what their kids do, their phenomenal success that they've had in cross country and track as well. Their hard work, their commitment, their leadership, their vision for the program, and just all around the care and commitment that they have to these kids is inspiring to all of us. And thank y'all so much for what you do.
If they both win the National Coach of the Year, we may have some questions that we have to answer around here.
All right, Ms. Koenig, you're
I'm next.
up next with introduction of new hires.
Yes, we have some, I think we have about four of our new hires here today, and we are going to honor them first with a pin, because we're welcoming them to Lovejoy, and this is the next chapter of their life that they're going to be writing while they're here. And of course, also with an apple, a caramel apple there, as it also is representation of education. So I'm going to ask Courtney, would you come up first and introduce yours?
Yes.
And I believe you have a silver star too, don't you?
Yeah. A what?
A silver star. That means They're a Lovejoy ISD
Oh,
graduate.
Yes, of course. You threw
Yes.
me off there. Okay, yes, this is Shannon Ferguson, and she graduated from Lovejoy High School in 2016. You are a silver star for sure. Um, she was part of the visual arts program and also Majestics. And after graduating from Lovejoy, she attended Syracuse University for studio arts and graduated from there in 2020. And now we are so excited that she's working with our 5th and 6th grade students, and she is phenomenal. So happy to have her.
And Dr. Zambezi.
All right, thank you so much for having us tonight. The first two I am going to introduce actually had family commitments tonight, but I did want to let you know that we've recently hired Maria Carrera to teach Spanish for us, and she's been doing a fantastic job. She had 10 years of teaching in museums before she took her actual first teaching job at Lovejoy High School. She went to Texas Tech and SMU. And then in English 2, we have Kelly Young. She had 6 years of teaching, formerly in Frisco ISD, and she went to SMU. And then I'd like to introduce our new English 1 teacher, Miss Headland. She has experience in Clark County Schools in Nevada, taught in Richardson ISD. She has 6 years of experience. Her undergrad was at BYU, Idaho, and she got her master's at Arizona State.
I believe the cue is that you're up now with student recognitions.
I am. As you know, in Lovejoy, we recognize any student groups who compete at the state level or above. This spring, I think we're going to be pretty busy doing this. The first group I'm going to ask Coach Ross to introduce is our Lovejoy High School swim and dive state competitors.
Yes, Coach Bollinger, come on up here. I'm going to brag on Coach a little bit, and I'll let him brag on our kids. But this is his first year with us as our head swim coach, and he makes it look really, really easy what he's done this year. What I appreciate about him, he's brought a level of professionalism with an element of fun that I think made what we did this year so special. And I know the kids appreciate you, and we certainly do, your example and your hard work. Thank you so much, Coach. I'll let you brag on these kids.
All right. I'm just excited here to be able to brag on all my swimmers. It is awesome to be able to be here and honor them in this way. Sadly, my diver, one of my girls at the start of the show, can't be here tonight. Marina Ferraro is a 2-time state champion now, and that's absolutely amazing. The reason she's not here is exactly the reason you'd think with a diver that's that good. She's out there practicing right now. She had a 3-hour practice today, and she had to be out there. It's all the way out in SMU. Club season's about to start for her, and she's getting ready to compete. So I'll hold on to this award for her, but rest assured she is a very dedicated diver. She knows her craft well, and she is super pivotal to how the team works at meets. As for the swimmers who are here today, first I have Ava Easley. Ava is one of my sprinters and my backstroker. One of my backstrokers. She is one of the most precise swimmers I know. She'll get out of the water and she'll tell me 10 ways how that race was not good enough. And I have to sit there and try to convince her, well, actually, that was pretty good here and there, and it's not good enough because she wants to be the best. And it's exactly what I want out of her. Congratulations, Ava. Julia Stahl is next on my list here. Julia is one of my seniors. and one of my captains. Um, we're voting for who the MVP of the team was. And I explained to the team that the MVP isn't just someone who scored the most points or someone who just was really, really fast. It's also somebody who is so pivotal to how everybody works, how everybody functions on a team, that they need that person. And Julia has been that person this entire season. She's a great breaststroker. I would say on the girls' side, she's my most versatile swimmer. It's a shame to lose her, but she had a great season. Congratulations, Julia. Next is Cameron Sperling. Cameron is probably one of my most purebred sprinters I have. She can't do much more than 100 sprint, but it is amazing to see her sprint. She gets out there and she goes. When you see her lock in, for sure, you can see behind the block, you know she's about to have a good race. She started off this season, I think, with a little less fire in her belly than she had in previous seasons. She got to mid-season and she just ignited, and it was an awesome thing to see. Just like Julia, she's a senior, and she is one of the biggest supporters of not just my freshman girls, but my entire team. I am really, really proud with how my senior class handled themselves this year. Congratulations, Cameron. Last one of my girls is Grace Hugh. Grace, it is really cool to be able to have a freshman make it to state on a relay. Not something I expected out of you at all, and you rose to that and you exceeded my expectations. Grace is a little more quiet. She takes a while to get comfortable, but she is one of the best flyers I've seen at this point in someone's career. She's right where she needs to be. I know she wants to be better than she is, and I think she's 100% capable of it. Congratulations, Grace. Up next, I got another, my last senior of the day, Christopher Pages. Chris is the most talented sprinter I have seen for a long time. It's really cool to watch him just get up and go. He was sick a lot this season. He was sick at state, most likely. Still not sure about that. But at regionals, I think I saw the best Chris I've ever seen. And at state, he was as fast. He went all season going, I guess we'll get into like time wise, but he was going a specific time all season. And then when he finally was ready to rest and compete for real for the final competition, it was a different Chris, and it was awesome to see him actually compete. Chris, you're more than just a sprinter for the team. You really are probably one of the funniest guys on the team, and you keep everybody happy. Even when you're annoying people, you're keeping them happy too. So congratulations, Chris. Next is one of my junior boys, Austin Stone. Austin he's a backstroker that I thought was a certain speed the entire season. When we got to regionals, all of a sudden, a completely different swimmer appeared, and he was now someone I think who's probably going to be a state qualifier next year for backstroke. It's awesome to see a kid commit to something and see their work ethic grow throughout a year, and see them progress along with it. Not to say Austin was slacking at the beginning of the year. That's not true at all. He's been a hard worker the entire time. But I've gotten to watch him bond with the lower classmen, kind of guide them on how to work hard, and it's been an honor to see. Congratulations, Austin. Next, I have a sophomore, Christopher Wong. My second Chris of the team. I'll have another Chris next year as well. So I'll be cursed with multiple Chris's for multiple years. But he is probably the weirdest spot on my team because he's a sprinter, he's a butterflyer, and he's a breaststroker. I thought for almost the entire season, he was a breaststroker. So I swam like a breaststroker. I was wrong. He was right. He told me the entire season he was a butterflyer. He's a butterflyer. And he did a great job at state, great job at regionals. I think the entire season we were arguing about who should be the butterflyer on the 200 medley relay. And it took us until about January, so almost 6 months into the season to, okay, yeah, you earned your spot as a butterflyer. Chris is one of those guys that make everything look easy. Even when he's working hard, it looks like he's not trying at all. My favorite moment all season with Chris is when he's racing a 50, he has a tempo that as a distance swimmer, I usually do in a 500, but he is so freaking strong in the water that he's just moving. He is going insanely fast. Chris, has been great coaching you this year. Congratulations. Last but not least, I have another junior, Grant Hugh. Grant is one of the fastest versatile swimmers I've seen. Grant got second at state in both his 500 free and his 200 free. He got school records in both of them as well. The craziest thing about Grant is I could put him in the 200 free and the 500 free and he'd get second place and get school records. I could have put him in the 200 IM and 100 breaststroke, and I think the exact same thing would have happened. They're very different events, but I am 100% confident that he could have done just as well or better. It's very rare as a coach to look at a swimmer and see that they're good at a lot of things and not know which thing to put them in. Grant's at a level where really he can decide what he wants to do. It's already decided that he's going to swim in college, that he's going to get a good scholarship. But the question is, how much farther can we push it? How much more can we grind? And Grant's one of those guys who's not afraid to do that. He's extremely talented, and it's been a great season with him. Congratulations, Grant.
Good evening. Dr. Zambezi and I had the distinct honor tonight of recognizing 7 of our LHS students who have achieved the honor of National Merit Finalist. So I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Zambezi as he gives you a little bit more background on this award and what this means for these students and a little bit more about what they're involved in at LHS.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I think we have everyone who's here tonight, but if you're a National Merit Finalist, we're starting a line right there. All right. Good evening, Mr. Owens, Board, and Superintendent Cordell. I have the distinct privilege this evening of presenting our Lovejoy High School National Merit Finalists. These students represent 7 of the 15,000 students nationwide who have advanced to finalist standing. This journey to National Merit Finalist officially began back in October of 2021 when they were juniors. Although I can tell you it began well before this time with solid academic instruction, strong parent support, intense study, and test preparation. Listen to this. Of approximately 1.5 million students, they stood out as high scores on the PSAT National Merit Scholarship qualifying test. They were identified among the top 50,000 for program recognition, then the top 34,000 for commended student, and then one of the top 16,000 students to earn National Merit semifinalist standing. The students then submitted an application, essay, school-based recommendation, and verified their high academic standing, as well as took another test, the SAT or the ACT. Fast forward to February of this year, 2023. Each of these students received notification that they have advanced to finalist standing and are in the running for one of over 7,000 scholarship awards through National Merit. Students may earn $2,500 National Merit scholarships, corporate sponsored scholarships, and college sponsored scholarships. And so again, When we started with 1.5 million, the students that you're about to hear are the 7,000 finalists. So pretty amazing. And I have the opportunity tonight to say all their names. It doesn't look like all of them are here, but 5 of the 7 will come up and take their picture and get their certificate. First off, I don't see him, but the first one that I'd like to recognize is Hamza Ahmad. Next is Lauren Duman. And then we're about to go 5 in a row because here comes Austin Gonzalez. Let's give him a round of applause. Devin Larimer. Connor O'Dowd. Liam Palazzolo. And Luke Scholl.
Great way to start the evening. Thank you all very much. Next up is item 7, public comments related to agenda items. And I think we have one public comment tonight, is that correct?
Yes, sir. We have Miss Alice Robinson. If you could please step over there to the podium.
And before
Mr.
you start
Evans.
speaking, we'll start your time. Let me read a couple of statements here and then we'll get going. Board of Trustees encourages public comment. All public comment at a meeting other than a regularly scheduled meeting should be limited to agenda items posted on the meeting. For the meeting, by signing up to provide public comment at a board, you're acknowledging and accepting the procedures for public comment available online. Any individuals seeking to speak during a public comment session should arrive up to 15 minutes prior to the meeting and fill out a comment card prior to the designated start time provided on the meeting notice. Public comment cards must be completed in entirety with accurate and truthful information. Each individual will have one opportunity per meeting to share their comments with the Board of Trustees, not multiple opportunities per individual agenda item. If a speaker is not present when his or her name is called, the speaker forfeits the right to speak. Presiding officer reserves the right to reduce the number of minutes. If time does not allow for you to speak at a public comment, the Board of Trustees may allot additional time for public comment or defer specific agenda items for review at a subsequent meeting. If you have specific concern related to an employee of the district or a specific student issue, you are encouraged to utilize the district's grievance procedures provided in board policies DGBA local, FNG local, and GF local or applicable grievance processes. Each grievance procedure allows for an individual to redress grievances with the Board of Trustees. All relevant procedures are available online at lovejoysd.net. Board of Trustees will not be disruptive behavior will not be tolerated in the meeting if after the provision of a single warning, the disruptive behavior continues, the disruptive individual may be escorted out of the meeting by district officials and/or law enforcement. It's a criminal offense for a person with intent to prevent or disrupt a lawful meeting to subsequently obstruct or interfere with the ordinary conduct of a meeting by physical action or verbal utterance. Thank you for allowing me to do that. So you have 3 minutes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. Well, my name is Alice Robinson, and I have 2 students in the district in 3rd and 6th grade. And I am going to look at my phone mostly for my notes because my brain fogs over when I public speak, and I just want to make sure I get my points across. This is in regards to the 4-day week option. From my perspective as a real estate agent, I speak only on behalf of myself, not on my team. But I am a member of the GRISAT group, and a lot of our business is here in the Lovejoy community. As we all know, the home prices in Lovejoy have jumped tremendously, and it is getting harder and harder for the young families that our district so desperately needs to be able to afford to move into Lovejoy. From my experience, the young families that can afford our home prices are typically dual income families and need a 5-day week and work week and school week. I personally have 2 separate buyer clients moving here in the summer from out of state that have each reached out to me about the potential of this passing, and they've asked me to keep them abreast of what decision is made. In both cases, they have told me that if it passes, they will look in South Lake instead. I have faith that a large amount of our currently enrolled families will stay if this passes, because we all know how amazing our teachers are and how wonderful of an education and an experience that Lovejoy provides. It's hard to truly describe to someone how wonderful our community is. You really have to experience it to get it. But my fear is that our new family enrollment numbers will decrease tremendously if this passes. My own family moved here from Dallas 7 years ago for the district, and I can say with confidence, we would not have even considered the move if the school was operating on a 4-day week at that time. So even though our current families may stay for the most part, I believe this will be a huge deterrent in gaining new families. I realize that something has to be done in order to retain our amazing teachers, and that all options must be considered. This option may keep the teachers happy in the near term, but I do not believe it is what's best for the students, the families, and the long-term future of our district.
Thank you very much. Item 8 is our invocation. If you would, bow your heads with me. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the blessing to come and serve tonight, to be here to deliberate the business of the school. Lord, we lift up our children, our teachers, and our families, and we pray for blessings upon each of them, for their safety, for their health, and their well-being. Please bless us with wisdom and discernment, and help us to make great decisions tonight on their behalf, and just watch over us. In Christ's name, amen. All right, item 9A, notification of new hires. Ms. Koenig, in our packet. Yep, same for resignations as noted in item 9B. Item 10 is our consent agenda. Does anyone have anything they need pulled for review tonight in the consent agenda?
Yes, I had a couple questions.
Okay.
One of the first items is the minutes from the January 23rd meeting where we approved the innovative course, but it looks like another item in the consent agenda is to also approve the innovative course for drones.
Yes, there was an issue on the agenda. It was listed on the agenda as presentation. So exactly. So we want to make sure that we are technically correct. And so we've brought that forward again.
And then could I ask then does this involve hiring another teacher to do this course?
I'll let Dr. Tinsley and Dr. Zambezi address.
No,
the
we have a
resources.
current teacher that is teaching engineering that's going to be taking on this course.
I'm sorry, I have another one on the budget amendments. Ms. Cabrera, it looks like the difference that we have in the budget amendment versus the projections that you have later in the deck is just the $200,000 grant. Is that something we're reflecting in cash later in a projection, but we're not changing the budget for?
That is correct. We are not changing the budget in budget amendment number 2, but we will have a budget amendment number 3. And of course, the impact of fund balance will be 0 because we'll have the revenue coming in as well as the expenditure going out. But you'll see that next month.
Okay. Last question. Does this budget amendment fully reflect our current enrollment and our current scholar numbers that we know today? Or are we still kind of hedging our number there to make sure that we don't go over?
Ms. Koenig might be able to ask about the Lovejoy scholars, but this budget amendment reflects what we physically have received in our general ledger in the bank as of the end of January.
If there are no other questions, I consider a motion. Approve the consent agenda, the items presented in the consent agenda. Okay. So moved, Marvin Bobo. Second, Jason James, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. All right, item 11, consider an act on use of bond funds for capital assessment and planning. Ms. Cordell.
Absolutely. In front of you, you have, in the board book, have a proposal for us to partner with PBK to begin a capital assessment process. This is part of that capital work that we have talked about coming this spring. We believe that this will be a very important step to understanding our current state and then planning forward. The information that we gather through this process will also be very helpful for our capital planning committee, which involves parents, community members, and staff that will convene later this spring. I can answer any questions you might have.
I think my only question was, we can use bond funds for this type of evaluation?
We can use bond funds for this, and that was something that Deb Cabrera recommended as we were strategizing this component and certainly looking at our finances and how we could make this happen in the most advantageous way for the district.
And based on our prior conversations, it looks like you negotiated them down a little bit.
Thank you for noticing that. Yes, I did.
Good job.
Consider a motion for approval.
I motion, oh, go ahead. I motion that we approve this recommendation as presented.
So moved. Julie McLaughlin. Second, Ann Smith. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. Item 12, consider an act on the Senior Director of District Support Services. Ms. Koenig?
Okay, good evening. Tonight I am recommending for the Senior Director of District Support Services, Dr. James Hill. This was initially posted as Senior Director of Operations, but we have aligned it a little bit more and have changed that. Dr. Hill is an experienced educator. He has held both campus and district leadership positions for over 20 years. He spent his early years teaching middle school and high school in the Louisville Independent School District. During his 16 years there, he was a teacher, a coach, assistant principal, and he was principal of Huffines Middle School and the Colony High School before he went to Argyle. Once he left Louisville, he went out and was the high school principal in Argyle. Dr. Hill has over 25 years of experience, with the last 5 years being in Frisco ISD. He received both his Bachelor's of Education and Master's of Education degrees from the University of North Texas and his doctorate from Dallas Baptist University in Educational Administration back in 2018. Most recently, he has served as the Managing Director of Human Resources in the Frisco Independent School District. His primary responsibilities were supporting campus and district personnel, departments including custodial, construction, maintenance. He has also had oversight of campus facilities, financial management, and operations system. Dr. Hill has worked closely with campus and departments to develop, lead, and implement effective processes and systems. And he has been a presenter at many conferences, both local and nationally. Dr. Hill will have oversight of safety and security, custodial services, construction and facility planning, grounds, and maintenance. It's a full-time job. So, administration is recommending that you approve Dr. James Hill as the Senior Director of District Support Services.
Questions?
Dr. Hill couldn't be with us tonight. He was out of town.
Look forward to meeting him. I move to approve as recommended.
So moved. Mr. James. Second, Marvin Bobo. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. And welcome, Mr. Hill. Item 13 is consider an act on the resolution authorizing the Collins Central Appraisal District Chief Appraiser or other employee of the appraisal district to act as agent in regard to filing a protest against the comptroller's 2022 property value study for Lovejoy Independent School District. Ms. Cabrera.
Yes.
Can you just expand on why this is important to us and help in layman's terms?
Most certainly. Yeah. So good evening, President Owens, esteemed board members, and Superintendent Cordell. We are asking the board this evening to adopt a resolution naming the Collins Central Appraisal District to act as our agent to file a protest. And the reason why this protest is important, as you recall at the last budget workshop, we talked about getting our T2 preliminary value number and the impact that it has on our budget if we don't estimate exactly what we think the state's going to determine that value to be. And that's based again on the central appraisal districts submitting those values sometime at the end, around the end of November on behalf of the district. So The T2 value that we use to determine state aid is very important and can significantly impact our budget if we don't get local value. Local value is what we collect property tax revenue on and what goes out to all of our citizens. But if the state comes in and deems the appraisal district did not do as good a job as they thought they should have in evaluating our property. And if you recall from last time, I mentioned that our single family homes was the area we were deficient. We're allowed a 5% plus or minus variance. Now, 91% of our value is with single family homes, so it is quite significant. We want the local value to be determined by the controller to be a valid number. This invalid number puts us in a 1-year grace period. And what that means is they're going to determine, they're going to let us slide, let's put it that way, for this 1 year. And they're going to let us use this lower local value as determined by the CAD. But next year, you can't be in the grace 2 years in a row. So let's go ahead and protest this value and hopefully we will win. Now, I did go back since you asked me last time, is this the first time, and when was the last time we had to protest our values? The appraisal districts, their records go back about 15 years, and we were not in this situation at all in the past. This is the first time that this has happened to our district. But then again, you can think about, in the past, the astronomical increase in real property in this whole entire area, including, Lovejoy this past year, has been something that's a little bit unusual or unique in comparison to past years. And in saying that, I also want to add 10 districts are in the same situation in just the Collin County area. So the appraisal district will do its best effort to protest this values just so that we can get out of the grace period, so that potentially next year, if this should happen when we submit our 2023 local values, the state will determine that we did a really great job and only missed it by that margin of error of 5% plus or minus. So we don't have to worry about it and we can breathe a sigh of relief. We don't want to lose state aid by using a higher value. And as you know, state aid is determined not only by ADA or students that go to school are in attendance, but also by the wealth of the district. The higher the property value, the less state aid or more recapture in our situation. Does that answer your question, I hope?
Yeah, so for clarity, the state comptroller valued our property more than 5% higher than what our local taxing authority did and what we collected taxes on. So you won't hear many politicians putting that in their tagline, oh, we're going to lower your property taxes, but by the way, the comptroller says your property's worth a lot more than what your local taxing authority does. Therein, they can reduce our state aid by an amount as a result of that. So
yeah. And it was quite significant. If we just assumed that it was this year, we were in the second year of grace, therefore getting state value, it would have impacted us $1.5 million loss of funds.
Pretty substantial, and our central appraisal district's going to work on our behalf to argue with the state to appeal to them that their value is higher than it should be and ours is more in line. So
once you approve the resolution, sign it, and Ms. Rodriguez is kind enough to scan it in and get it to the appraisal district in the morning.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make it clear to the public the way the process works with our state funding and how important some of that is. So.
And they have until March 13th to get all the data that they have. They're going to try to prove their case by sending additional data, additional samples, resales, sales, new sales, just information that will probably, I would hope, expand the pool of their sample to show that, across the board, our values were put together by the appraisal district within that coefficient of error, that margin of error.
So it makes it a little hard to listen to some of the arguments they want to make about property tax relief and all those things they want to punchline when they run on their tickets, and then they turn around and this is the tactic that we're going to take from a value perspective. So
correct.
Could you remind us again when we might hear back on the results of the protest?
Oh yeah, that's the fun part. Probably not till the end of July, beginning of August, so we get to just wait. But as we said, the 22 tax year, which is the fiscal year 22, 23, we're safe because we are in 1 year grace. But we would prefer not to be in a 1 year grace period.
Other questions? If not, I entertain a motion.
I move to approve the resolution authorizing the Collins Central Appraisal District Chief Appraiser or other employee of the district to act as agent in regard to filing a protest against the comptroller's 2022 property value study for Lovejoy Independent School District.
Well stated motion by Jeff Wood. Second, Julie McLaughlin. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Consider an act on the general election contract for election services and the joint election for May 6th, 2023.
Yes, I recommend that the board please consider an act on the general election contract for election services and the joint election order for May 6th, 2023, which you've already approved.
Can you remind me how much this costs?
It's a little over $10,000. And that is posted in the board book as well with all of the line items.
Entertain a motion.
Move to approve as recommended.
So moved, Jason James. Second, Ann Smith. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, item 15 is going to be struck from the agenda tonight. Moving to item 16, celebration of learning, Dr. Tinsley.
Thank you. This month, we are spotlighting the Sloan Creek Intermediate School staff, and this is our science team, and we have a very special presentation tonight, and it's related to fifth grade camp, and I understand maybe we had some folks in the room that maybe attended this fifth grade camp at Sky Ranch. So I'm honored to introduce Ms. Halpin and her team.
Taste of what they learned at camp, and we have our awesome fifth grade science team here to do that. So I will let them take it away from here.
I'm gonna use my teacher voice if that's okay. Good. Okay. I'm gonna try. Oh, good. Come on. All right. I am Chelsea Chadwick, and I am in my 6th year here at Lovejoy. I taught 1 year of 6th grade science, and then that took me down to 5th grade. So I've been in 5th grade ever since. I'm born in Haiti. I'm also in my 6th year. This is my 1st year at Sloan in 5th grade. So I'm in first and fifth. And I'm in Wilson Road, and this is my 6th year also. We kind of started together. And I've been in 5th grade. And I'm in North Carolina. This is my 1st year at Lovejoy. So we got the amazing opportunity to spend a few nights at Sky Ranch, and of course the weather doesn't always cooperate at the beginning of February, so we had a couple of rainy days, but we really got our hands on some great learning the following 2 days. And so these are just a few pictures of fossils and little critters and students learning. They each had their own little folder similar to this with all of their paperwork on it. And they would go around learning about things that we have already covered for the year and the things that we're starting on in the next coming months. And these are just some samples of the student pages and their actual learning out in the field. So 5-6A is Torrance. So it was really cool just to see how all the different examples really came to life in a hands-on experience. So at one point they got to talk about friction and gravity, and then their forces, all the forces, and then the forms of energy that tied in with that. And they were given different like criteria and constraints that they had to meet when they got to actually put them into play and experience it and accomplish it. Really cool. They created a Mr. Facility, and there were two groups. One group had to create a certain data head that would create get to the end of the zip line the fastest, and then vice versa. Another group had to figure out a way to get there the slowest, and they had to stop off. So the group effort, and they were just given a bunch of materials, and it was their job to come up with how that was group was teaching the life. And then the other one was forces, like they were given like 4 different groups, and then they created rockets. Each rocket had a different they had to create something different. So one, the job was for it to like explode. The other one was for it to go as far as it could go or as short. And it was just really cool to see the kids come together, work as a group, and like it was awesome. And then it all tied. They were like, "Hey, we did this stuff in class." So we have a couple of pictures. The 2 groups that got the furthest within our group. Like we had a couple of pictures, and they were very, very proud of themselves.
And on the 5.7A, the specific changes, well, 5.7A has to do with the exploded processes that were specific dimensions, dimensions of occupancy. So there's actually like a chant, a song, but they were, with weathering the roads and vegetation. So that was also fresh on the kids. And then also the other one is the landform. So there was like a thing for the group, and it was like about 2. And the things like the depth of the landform, and how different landforms involve conflict, wind, water.
Okay, and so this was really fun for the kids. So this was 5.9A and 5.10A and 5.10B. And it's really what we're working on right now. They got to see and touch a bunch of different critters, the bearded dragon, the pancake tortoise. All of these were actually there, and they got to look at function, their habitat, and there's a lot of new words too. Like over here was about structure and function of the jaws, or I'm sorry, the teeth. Different. They had skulls, and they were like big, and they were teeth, and the structure of the teeth has to do with what they eat and everything. And then over here is their eyes. Some were peripheral, and some were binocular. So they learned that those, where their eyes are, also have to do with how they live in the environment. And this is the lizard. That was, that's the bearded dragon they got to see. This is snake. And over here were some more mammals. This was slowly the reptiles and the mammals that they got. And also some so it was the same thing where they did the structure function, they did the environment, they did what they did something. Now that's what we're doing actually with class right now. So they did. They gave them a great reading all like a vocabulary. We're doing this and that. Okay.
So in my classroom, I have five people here. The ones that are somewhat similar are the leopard gecko and the crested gecko. So we're going to kind of incorporate this in not only the structure function, kind of their role, and we created
Will this be graded?
It will be a major
Yeah.
grade.
Excellent.
Okay, so most of the time, I know you guys all want to learn about my geckos. We're just gonna kind of look at the first front page where we're talking about inherited traits and behaviors, because that's what we kind of just wrapped up today. The quiz on it. So we kind of learned the differences between the inherited traits and learned behaviors. And we talked about habitats. So there's both geckos, but they're both completely different. So I have two different habitats. They're on front and back. So and it shows you where each one lives. The first one, our leopard gecko, lives in a dry mountainous area. And then our crested gecko lives in a more humid tropical environment and tends to live more of the vertical instead of the horizontal like the leopard gecko. So let's see if they're so I have it's okay. This one, he's very old. I actually inherited him from a third grade science teacher. He's been a Yes, this is the leopard. So and the kids love him. So my leopard gecko, he's kind of hiding in there. And they're both nocturnal, so they're eager. So I have so this is Flash. He came from Hart Elementary from Miss Hebert. And before that, he was, I think, a student. So he was 13. So he lives a life. He will spend a whole lot of time. He's like, I'm usually in the dark, quiet now. So he, what are we doing? Learned behavior, inherited traits. So he inherited his awesome camouflage. He also has toes with claws on them, which most geckos do not, because they have, and I'll show my other little guy. They have little hair on their, like almost like hair type structures to help them climb on these smooth surfaces. And he has a little food bowl in his normal aquarium that he knows that's where I'm going to go find food. So that is going to be his learned behavior. The kids absolutely love him. He has a pretty good sized aquarium. Sometimes he keeps his head out. They all excited because he's playing hide and seek with them. So, and it's really cool. You know, his record wasn't hard, but he has this very thick, fat, fatty tail. And so he uses that as his backup for if he, I mean, he could go months. An adult can go months. So, so his tail has a lot of fat on it. And he also has an eyelid that completely works. So he's a fun little friend to have in my classroom. And then I will introduce you to another gecko that looks completely and totally different. So he's still a baby. One of our special education aides actually hatched him from a little egg. So he is still learning how to be hand trained. That is his learned behavior. And it doesn't always work out. And he is a climber, unlike the other one. He is the one that has the sticky feet, and then he also has a partial treatment tail. And if you notice, he has the little ridges on his face. Yeah. And they go up there. No, got agitated. So his tail is a completely different
and so. She did this with you guys, this is kind of how it was. They would bring it in, we were out there, and we talked about it, and then the first, and then what we had done, and do all that. And he jumped. And this is what, and I also have, Frank and come visit all my friends. Oh, it is. It's fun. Okay. All right. So later on, we created this not too long ago, and we're going to utilize it with our students, and that way we can get the little sprints out, and they get so excited, and we can focus them out. We don't get out as much exercise, but for this little lesson, we're going to do incorporate something similar to what we did at Kate. It's very, very fun. Okay, so I'm sure you've heard all of the stories about all of our fun, crazy, viral things. This is our first year, we had a lot of learning to do. The kids had an amazing time. The weather and all of the other things that we couldn't really control. Unfortunately, I did not get to see this. I got to see the video, and I'm sure many of you guys did, but we wanted to share the video of the fish. As a disclaimer, he warned students that that's what he was going to do, and if anybody needed to leave at that moment, they could. They were not required to be there. But he was very good, very educational in the way that he was presenting the information.
But he was, didn't he?
I felt like maybe that was his first day. He knew what he was supposed to say, but yeah.
That was intended to knock the fish out, correct? Is that what he said? Okay. Yes.
It was just show the kids what you would do if you were going to fillet or process this.
You knock him out. Yeah.
You're supposed to knock it out before you fillet. And that was what we said normally to use the pole. We didn't have that.
Well, we have a little something so y'all will remember that fish. Anna's going to present you guys with your own fish that you can have in memory. So there's your Lovejoy fish. So anyway, thank you so much.
I've been 2 years in a row. I might retire.
Yes, we will display that proudly at some point.
All in good fun.
We did not get to see it. Our groups did not get to go fishing.
So, Ms. Cabrera, you get to follow the fish video. Budget workshop.
Yes, again, good evening, President Owens, esteemed board members, and Superintendent Cordell. Before I start on the budget development workshop, I just wanted to clarify one thing that I just said. I got my grants confused. So this is actually a good thing. Our budget amendment number 3 will have some impact for 2 grants. We don't currently have in the revenue or the expenditure budget the JET grant, which is no impact to fund balance. But we also don't currently have in the budget amendment yet officially for you to approve is that $200,000, which is the safety and security grant, which is basically going to supplant the $200,000 that we have for our school marshals. That was a last minute add to the budget presentation on Friday. So it did not get in the budget amendment, so we'll shore that up in a minute, but I just wanted to get out that error out of the way. So this evening on the budget development workshop, we have a tag team effort here, and I'm going to start, and then we'll talk a little bit about compensation and salaries and turn it over to Mrs. Koenig, and then Mr. Willman will come in and finish up with some of the nitty gritty numbers that he has developed and projected for you to see. And tonight's, we're going to mostly concentrate on things that are different or updates from the last budget and just kind of develop on that. So today's goals, obviously, to continue the budget process with the board, and then to give you some estimates, updates, and projections, as you'll see throughout some of the slides, and obviously answer any of your questions that you may have. So the projections, the current 23-24, we talked about before how a lot of what we build on for 23-24 depends on what's in the 22-23 and how that's going to end up at the end of the year. So I want to call to your attention the budget amendment fiscal year 23 budget. This is budget amendment number 1 that you approved back in November. So going forward, now that you have approved budget amendment number 2, that will now reflect that. Now that number is the change, the net 1.875 that you see there. That will now go to 2.817 that you've just adopted tonight. And then on the number 3, we will get you to this new projected year-end number of $3,017,523. The difference between that number and the question that you asked is this $200,000 grant. So the first half of the slide shows the change in projected to the fund balance that we're starting with. And that is made up of the ESSER grant. We're supplanting and using some of those dollars for what's in our current budget. So we'll have to shore that up, with you as a payroll savings and bring that forward in the future. And then the $200,000 for the grant that we're going to use to supplant again the marshal salaries. Now remember, these grants are a one-time fix. So going, forward, we need to be careful when we work on our budget to know that we don't get into that funding cliff situation. And then we did amend the budget this evening for some of the revenue fees that we've recognized and talked about, transportation, the Lovejoy scholars, the rental being more than what we had originally budgeted. So to take this, forward, we'll be starting the year with a positive increase in our fund balance. The beginning fund balance of $10.9 million is now projected to be $13.9 million at the end of this fiscal year, or basically 130 days of cash on hand. So some of our current challenges, and still continue to be some of our current challenges, is retaining our Lovejoy ISD legacy of excellence, looking at teacher staff retention, recruitment, and support, and also responding to some revenue challenges. To put that into context, we're talking about declining enrollment and re-engagement with the demographer. We are keeping the same 4,050 enrollment figure. There was nothing on his update that would cause us to believe that we should adjust that number at this particular time. Of course, obviously, the legislative session, the last date to file bills will be March the 10th. So then we'll know everything that's on the table. And then it's just the I wouldn't say fight, but the bargaining between the Senate and the House on some of these bills that deal with the same thing, but deal with it in different contexts. I'm talking mostly about the basic allotment and the drive for better salaries for the teachers and staff. And then, of course, the increased property values. And as you know, or if you've heard, the amount of recapture that's going into the state has almost, doubled since 2019. I think it's up to $5 billion. And what that means for the citizens at home is a lot of the money that you pay in your local district for taxes, we land up writing a check to Austin, and it goes down there, it goes in their general revenue, and that's why it contributes to the surplus. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to use that surplus on public education. So we're always got our eye on the legislative session and are very hopeful that we will see some good changes this next biennium. The 23 budget priorities, again, is always looking and keeping in mind fund balance, because the way our state funding flows, we have to make sure that we have 90 days cash on hand at all times so we can make payroll, particularly in November before the majority of our taxes come in. Employee compensation, obviously a top priority and has been in this district for some time. Attendance, we've built in a 95.5% assumption on attendance. I don't see any reason why we can't make that, but the better we have in getting that number higher, then the more opportunities we have for garnering state aid, unless they change it. And there are several bills filed first time to actually do it based on average enrollment or membership as opposed to ADA. We'll see how that goes. And then obviously I mentioned enrollment, looking at our enrollment trends. And then now this is the part where we will let the expert in compensation and salary and staffing take over. Mrs. Koenig.
This is the good part, right? In the budget, what we're recommending is we are recommending or sharing with you a 3% salary increase for all staff. That includes custodial, all the, everyone, teachers, aides. We're also asking for an increase minimum hourly in this budget rate to $15. And we have 35 employees that make below $15 right now, some as low as $10.65 an hour. So I think that is definitely a priority that we looked at. We were also noticed when we surveyed districts around us, we noticed that our contribution of district benefits was significantly lower. We actually surveyed around 30. We narrowed it down to about 8 or 9 around us. And there was, we currently contribute $225 to district benefits, and most of them around us was significantly more. There was just one other one. Some of them, so this would change it from $225 to $275 there. And of course, we, which I shared with you last time, just looking at supplemental benefits and seeing what we can do to help support teachers with supplemental benefits, making some offers where they were all actually coming down a little bit and providing more of a benefit for them. Okay. And as far as teacher salaries, ours are about $5,000 less than McKinney, right here up to the north of us. Our salaries are currently on our schedule. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. Also built into this budget is 5 special education teachers. We've already added 2 this spring. We added 1 at Hart and 1 at the high school. We're recommending 2 additional special education aides, 1 SLP, speech language pathologist, and 2 lead diagnosticians, so that we can have our diagnosticians more on campuses to support our administration, kids, and our teachers there. Any questions for me? Okay.
All right, thank you, Ms. Koenig, and good evening, board and Superintendent Cordell. It's an honor to be here tonight to present to you the Lovejoy 5-year financial model. Just to start off by adding some additional assumptions on top of what Ms. Koenig has just shared, not only for the 23-24 school year, but then also for the next 2 years going out to 25-26. So as Ms. Koenig mentioned, we do have the 3% payroll increase for 23-24, but as we're going into the next 2 years, it's 2% annually for that. And then we have a 5% assumption on our non-personnel. But then in the next 2 years after that, the idea is that inflation will normalize. So we have a 2% in there, but we'll monitor that. And if that doesn't, if we don't see that trend, we can adjust accordingly. Again, on the enrollment projections, we had adjusted for the 23-24, but based off of that adjustment, we've also went out and did that same assumption going out for the next 2 years. So in the previous 5-year model, you had seen kind of a stable enrollment, even probably growing a little bit, but in this one, you'll see more of a declining enrollment going into 2026. And then the big change that we implement in our assumption is that there is an increase to the guaranteed yield in the Tier 2 funding based off of meeting that threshold for equity across the state of the 96th percentile. So we're confident that they will increase that based off of statute. It could be plus or minus a couple of dollars, but we're pretty confident that that will happen. And then other budget consideration and kind of the financial impact of that, as Ms. Koenig had shared about the medical contribution and additional staffing needs and what that cost is there. But then also as we're looking at our declining enrollment, that we would be looking to scale due to that, but then also doing a deep dive into the program restructuring and eliminating and reorganizing some positions. When you look at those 4 items, you can see it's kind of a net neutral benefit to the org. And then as we're looking at the Lovejoy Scholar tuition, in the current year, we're well over $1 million. So we believe we can keep that going for the next 3 years, $1 million per year. So based on all the assumptions that we just shared in the budget consideration, here's kind of the financial outlook. But before we dive into the 24, 25, and 26 years, just wanted to point out, looking at the surplus for the 22 year and the anticipated 23 surplus, the importance of that and the tremendous amount of work that went into that. So if you recall, in the 22 year, we had a budget it was pretty much a balanced budget, small surplus. But then to end the year knowing that we had a unrealistic ADA percentage in the budget and a high enrollment number, to end the year at 2.4 million in surplus is amazing. And then even looking at the current year and adding roughly 1.1 million to our surplus is just a testament to all the hard work that the leadership, the staff, the board, and the Financial Sustainability Committee put forth, and really emphasizing our #1 priority with the fund balance. So since we prioritize that and we're anticipating it being about 130 days of fund balance at the end of this year, it kind of helps us support as we go out. As you can see, we have a growing deficit budget starting in 24 going into 26. Now this is based off of current law, so no funding increase coming out of the legislative session. So with the legislative session having such a strong fund balance, it allows us to be a little patient in how we will approach the deficits, so that way we can see what the results and the outcome of the legislation is. Then as we look at the kind of legislative updates, the bills are still the same that we had presented back in January. I've updated some of the numbers based off of the 6,700 and the bill for 7075 on the increase in the basic allotment. And then we were also provided a new template to be able to run some of those scenarios, because it's never a simple rate times quantity equals total revenue. We need a 100 worksheet Excel workbook to find out how we get funded for 3 years. So those numbers are updated based off of that massively insane Excel workbook. So when we look at kind of the 2 bills that are kind of proposing an increase in the basic allotment, we can see what that will do to our fund balance and days of fund balance based off of the 6,700 and the 7075. So as you can see here on this, the 6,700, we have 1 more year of surplus budget, and then in 2025, we have a manageable deficit to be able to get to a balanced budget. And then the overall 3-year contribution to fund balance is roughly $6.7 million to fund balance over the course of the 3 years, and it gets us an additional 55 days of fund balance in 2026, then gets us to 106. And then you can see obviously the 70-75 gets us way more than that and gets us up to the 135. But caveat this with, in this analysis, it doesn't factor in the things that we don't know, that there could be some unfunded mandates that will come through legislation. A good example of that is back in House Bill 3 in 2019, pre-K4. They mandated if you offer pre-K4, you have to do it full day, but they're only going to fund for half a day. So we don't know what they're going to do, so we're not factoring that in. So that could be something that could impact these numbers, whatever comes out of legislation. So as part of the increase in the basic allotment, current statute says that we have to use 30% of that increased amount into compensation, and 75% of that has to be directed directly towards classroom teachers, full-time librarians, counselors, and nurses. So what I'm showing here is that based off of our current 3% compensation, which compensation is defined as both base salary and medical contribution, is that we meet that statute if they increase the basic allotment to a minimum of 6550. Anything in excess of 6550, we have to give an additional increase above the 3%. So when we look back at the previous slide, I've already factored that in. So in the instance of the 6,700 basic allotment, we would increase salaries by an additional $300,000 overall. Again, this is under current law. Things can change based off of the teacher vacancy task force that is currently going on. And what we're hearing is that with the emphasis on increased teacher pay, they could raise that up to potentially 40% or higher. So this is based off of current statute of 30%. And that is all that I have. Any questions for me?
So your projections out in, I guess, 24, 25, and 26, the enrollment numbers are quite a bit different than what we had been presented previously. Is that just based on, I understand the projections on 24, we've talked about that, but I guess 25 and 26, are you just using the same methodology of rolling out the top years and not assuming any additional enrollments coming in to the other years?
We're assuming some additional enrollment, but very consistent to the 50 that we've added in the current year that we're going out. So same approach on advancing the grade, same number of kindergartners plus an additional 50 new students.
So that's quite a bit different than what we've done in the past, using the demographer to lean on some of those things. Can we reconcile that with or maybe at some point have the demographer confirm some of those things for the out? I mean, I understand next year, but for the out years.
Yep, absolutely. He has wrapped up. We have met with him a couple weeks ago, last week, and he's filing up and wrapping up some numbers for us to look at. I think he just sent to us later this afternoon. So
Okay.
we haven't had time to look at it, but we'll definitely take a look at it and bring back those numbers on the March 20th.
And then the other
workshop.
question I had is maybe some sensitivity analysis around the property values. I mean, it seems like we're already starting to see some moderation. Just like you said, you're using a 5% number this year for inflation and then 2% moving forward. I think it might make sense to look at something similar on the property value analysis, just because I think we've seen drastic increases over the last couple of years. I don't know that it's realistic to anticipate that out in perpetuity. So maybe
Absolutely.
looking at some moderation on how that affects the recapture numbers as well would be probably beneficial.
Yeah, I can work on that and bring that to the next workshop.
I think you've been using less than actual on property value growth, though, right? You've been using like 7%. It's been going to like 15 to 18.
Yeah, it has over the last
So
couple
we're
of
already
years.
kind of handicapping that number, but maybe even a little more. So
If you look previously, in the
I think
previous
it's
years,
on there at 15 for last year, and I think he used actuals before. I think the historical average is much less than what we're projecting into the future. So maybe somewhere in between, it's going to be, the forecasts are just assumptions, right? But just seeing somewhere of in between and how sensitive the numbers are to it would be helpful, probably.
We had a lot of good conversation on the attendance rate last year, and we kind of decided to do the 95.5 because we thought we were going to eventually get back up to our historical average of 96% attendance. So in this case, we're just kind of leaving that flat. What's the delta of 95.5 and 96?
1%, if I recall.
250-ish or something
It's,
like
yeah,
that?
roughly about 300, 350.
300, okay.
But I'll double check.
So maybe
that number.
$150,000 difference. Okay. No, that makes sense. Look at that recapture number in FY26.
Yeah.
It's enormous. And
Yeah.
so we're showing the impact of our rising property values, but our declining enrollment. And I think to your point earlier is that we're writing big checks, maybe potentially for our personal property taxes, but the district is turning around and writing that check back to Austin. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. I was also really impressed to see the impact of the increased basic allotment and what's that doing to our fund balance, because that really does change the story almost completely in the outer year where we're going. So certainly want that. On your budget considerations, all of these items that you have here are in the budget. Is
Yes,
that
ma'am,
right?
they
Or
are.
projection that you're proposing? Okay.
And I should add, I don't think I mentioned this when I was presenting on that slide. If you happen to review it over the weekend, the numbers have changed a little bit to now. I was only thinking about the staff that we're adding in the 23-24, not thinking about the 2 sped staff that Ms. Koenig presented that we added this spring. So I added that number back in.
Can you reiterate what that contingency is? I know we've used it in the past, but then we got away from that. Now we're adding it back. Is that right?
Yeah, we just built in a 1% contingency on the revenue just in case something happens, if enrollment falls, attendance falls, or we miss something and going through the budget process just for any unanticipated surprise.
It's just giving us a buffer.
Yeah, giving us a buffer. And that right now is about 380,000 annually.
But we also have a buffer in the fact that our fund balance is above where we need it to be as well, right? Okay. So am I correct in seeing that over that 3-year period, that about 400,000 would be about $1.2 million worth of excess expense potentially, right? If we didn't use it?
That's
Okay.
right.
And are there any other program-based priorities that have been included in this estimate? We've talked about the increased staffing, which I think is great, but are there any other program-based funding that you've specifically allocated for?
No, we have not. I know that one, as far as the fees, we've vetted the numbers, wanted to really look at, I met with Kevin to really look at, because the numbers that we had provided were based off of current enrollment and current participation. So just trying to apply some factor that we know that, with our declining enrollment and then what that would mean with the fees, that we wanted to have a really strong number that we'll bring to you on March 20th to be able to seek your guidance on how you want us to proceed with that.
I would add for our community that this, of course, is not our final budget recommendation. This is just where we're at in the process at this point in time, and we'll continue to bring this forward to you at our future regular meetings. I would also revisiting what's going on demography-wise. As I said a while back, we re-engaged with our demographer. We anticipated, based on our initial timeline, to have that wrapped up and presented to you all by now. However, we've had to go deeper with that because, as you all know, demographic projections are built on trends. You can't use the trends before COVID. You can't use the trends during COVID. And the trends after COVID have not yet been established. And in conversations with other superintendents of other school districts, they're having the same challenges. And so we're very appreciative of our demographer that we've added additional meetings, we've dug deeper. What you're seeing in here is obviously the roll-up. As we have additional information, we'll bring that to you. And should we have confidence in a different number, we'll bring that forward to you and let you know the rationale behind that.
And I believe just the rest of our slides is just an update and reminding you of the timeline the budget development, process, and then getting down to obviously the adoption of the budget on the June 19th of 2023 regular board meeting. Any other questions you might think of we might be able to help you with? Great questions, by the way.
I just wanted to tell Thomas I love the spreadsheet. I think it's great.
Thank you. Item 18, we're going to hear an update from our legislative subcommittee.
Mr. James, you go ahead and start us off on.
So we've been busy. We've hit the ground running as a committee and started to put together some good resources. We expect that a website that's under development will be coming soon. There were 5 of us that went down to the Capitol on February 21st. Barrett, myself, Jeff, Katie, and Marvin were down there. We were able to meet with several legislators while we were down there and had some meaningful conversations. This was the first time in a long time I've spent any time in the Capitol, and I didn't really know what to expect. So it was a good learning process, but we were able to meet with quite a few legislators and start some good dialogue that hopefully will be good for the district as we move through the legislative session. Coming up, we're going to continue to review what bills are filed. We mentioned we're going to be launching a website. Some of the things to expect. I know a lot of people are anxious around how they can help, how people can get involved. Really, if we go to the next couple of slides, let's turn it. So there are pictures of some of it while we were down in Austin touring the Capitol. The chief of staff of Representative Noble, she's been down there for 20 years, and I asked her how long did it take for her to figure out her way around the Capitol. She said a good decade. So we got lost a few times, but we found our way eventually. So we were able to meet with Senator Paxton and Representative Noble. And one thing I would say, there are people we could start reaching out to. People in the community could start having conversations. One thing we recommend would be maybe sending them our district priorities that are on the website. That's something that you could take a look at, things that are important to us. We've already mentioned the impact of increasing the basic allotment. That'd be the one thing that would have the most impact for us if we could have that accomplished. So imparting on them the importance of supporting legislation that could increase that basic allotment. These are our primary people that we could talk to. But I think Jeff's going to talk about some of the other people on the various committees that we could also be reaching out to, but these are our representatives. So developing those relationships would be important. We've tried to start that process as a board, but continuing to do that, that'd be the first step with the community to be able to reach out to them directly and talk to them about our district priorities. I do expect that we will have specific times where maybe a certain bill is in committee, or as we learn about which bills are getting further along in the process, that we might have calls to action, specific times for the community to get more involved on a specific item. We're going to be communicating with you directly as those times arise. So in the first part would be just starting that conversation, reaching out, talking to them about our priorities. As we find more specific items, as we monitor these specific bills that are ongoing, there'll be more times that we give you more specific action items.
So this is just a kind of a working calendar. Some of these things have already happened. Of note, it's already been discussed tonight. March 10th is the last day for filing. We will be likely putting together some advocacy opportunities, either through an organization and or direct advocacy opportunities for Lovejoy families. Sometime we're thinking April, May, but there may be direct calls to action before then, depending on how far bills advance into committee and whether we see an opportunity to help a bill get through committee or keep it from coming out of committee. The legislature wraps up May 29th, but realistically, I think the last two sessions have ended up in some type of special session that went into the summer. So that's our kind of our calendar right now. Next slide, please. So these are the House Education and Senate Education Committee members with chairs and vice chairs listed there. We actually got to meet with Representative Buckley for a brief period of time on Tuesday, and I know we have meetings coming up with Senator Creighton. The layout of the committee, where they're from and their party affiliation, I think will have some influence on how certain issues are decided. I'm thinking of voucher systems and things like that, because I think those have been largely opposed by certainly Democrats, but also rural Republicans because of the importance of the schools in those locations. Some of the bill tracking that's going on, we've covered before. I think we saw from the slides in the budget workshop how important the increase of the basic allotment is. It adds a two-pronged effect. It helps per student funding. It also lowers our recapture payments. So that's very important. And I think what I want everybody to know is that these are very small increases to the basic allotment. I mean, the basic allotment is it's a little over $6,000 a student. So these are minimal increases, but the 7075 is the bill. It's the highest increase that's been filed in a bill in the House and the Senate. So we're going with the highest one. But I think everyone should know that there's a lot of talk coming out of Austin about per student funding being at all-time highs. Yeah, we pay more in student funding than we did 30 years ago, but it used to represent a larger percentage of the total picture. Now, state funding or student funding from the state is a lower percentage, and there's a heavier reliance on local taxes. And that's a trend that's been going on for 30 years. So there's an organization called Just Fund It Texas that has some good facts and talking points on basic allotment. Texas ranks 48 out of 50 states in the nation on per student funding. That surprised me. Also, we are 44,000. We're talking with these. Keep in mind, we're talking about these basic increases these small increases to the basic allotment. It would take us $4,300 extra to get to the national average on per student funding. So those are just some things to think about, and those are some of the things that we think about and we talk about when we're down in Austin. One bill that's been filed is Senate Bill 418. It's been filed by Senator Paxton. It relates to out-of-district transfer students. It mandates a list of acceptance criteria priorities and then a lottery system for remaining availability. It prohibits charging tuition to help narrow the existing gap in state funding versus the actual cost of education. There's also another bill, Senate Bill 948, which relates to permissible uses for the school safety allotment and creates a mental health allotment. It essentially removes mental health services from the school safety allotment and creates a new allotment for mental health services, a minimum of $100,000 allotment, but some districts that have greater than 50% educationally disadvantaged students would get more. So bills are still being filed. These are the things that we're looking at and keeping an eye on right now. Certainly there's more. We're obviously focusing on finance and student finance at this point, given that we're in our budget process, but we're also paying attention to other issues as well.
Thank you for the update. Appreciate it. Item 19 will be the K through 5 math instructional materials adoption update.
Yes, thank you. Wanted to kind of give you some background before I get into the adoption process. I brought this back earlier in the year. We were awarded a grant from the Texas Education Agency to develop a math instructional framework. So basically what that is, that we've been working with the Meadows Foundation, and Texas Education Agency. It's really to develop what is our why and our framework that we work with under in mathematics. And just to give you a little insight, we'll be bringing more information later to you, but this is just an overview of the vision that this team of our teachers and curriculum coordinators have come up with regarding the vision of mathematics. So this kind of leads us when we determine looking at how we align our decisions with instructional materials, how does that align to our framework and our beliefs here in Lovejoy? So if you look at it, it really does guide decisions for our instructional strategies and practices, our curriculum documents development, and as well as a selection of our instructional resources. So this gives you kind of the 5 areas of mathematics we look at: the conceptual understanding and the procedural skills and math fluency. We value productive struggle within our students in the area of mathematics. We want to create confident, creative, and curious mathematicians. We want to connect key math concepts across all grade levels, and we want to engage with rigorous math instruction. So that's how this is kind of our roadmap on decision making. Just as a reminder, it's a difference in our curriculum standards, which are the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills. That is determined by the state of Texas. Our curriculum documents are what we actually create to help teachers with planning and execute the text. And then the instructional resources are what help teachers deliver the text. So we sometimes interchange curriculum with instructional resources. The resources are the tool that the teachers use to deliver the instruction. So as you know, I shared at the last meeting that we've been conducting a instructional materials inventory, pre-K-12, and that's across all content areas, grade levels, courses, departments. And one of the areas that we had a significant gap was our K-5 mathematics. We did not really have a solid primary instructional resource. We were hearing that from our teachers, and as we dug deeper into it, we really did not have that for our teachers. So we've been in the process of the adoption process to ensure our teachers get what they need. So just as a timeline here, we started sharing instructional materials that we determined align with the framework, the math instructional framework, also the standards, and then our belief system in mathematics. So the two instructional resources we are looking at is STEM Scopes Math, which we currently have right now. It's not as comprehensive as what we would like. We do have to supplement that quite a bit, but it's still a consideration that we want to make sure our teachers have a voice in. And then the other one is Eureka Math, and it's a much more robust tool that really will help a seasoned teacher, but truly help someone new to the profession coming in. And when you think about elementary, they're teaching multiple content areas. So this was one that we felt like would be a good resource for us to consider. We do have some grade levels right now that are using it, that are piloting it for us, and we're getting really good feedback from our teachers. They feel like that it's time saving. They're not having to go to multiple sources to pull together lessons. But we still wanted to bring forward STEM Scopes and Math and Eureka. So that we have been gathering comments from our teachers K through 5. We have an adoption committee that's made up of teachers, administrators that are evaluating this materials using the district rubric. And then we are going to be providing some opportunities for the community to review our materials that we are considering for adoption. And there'll be a window of time that we'll be communicating and advertising soon. And then our hope is to bring a recommendation forward at the end of this month, end of March, for a recommendation to adopt the material. Any questions?
Any questions for Ms. Tinsley? Thank you. All right, item 20, presentation on T-Test, Texas Teacher Evaluation and Support System. Ms. Koenig.
Thank you, Lori. Okay, I'm going to bring up 2 more. We have Megan Rollins over there. She's the assistant principal at Hart, and Marcy Hambrick. Dr. Marcy Hambrick is, of course, the director in HR. So we're going to talk to you about T-Test, Texas Teacher Evaluation Support System. today. First of all, I wanted to let you know that this was something that we brought forward, that we had talked about in strategic planning when we were discussing Lovejoy 2030. It does tie to our strategic plan, talent acquisition, retention, and support, 6.2.2 and 6.3.1. We created an advisory committee to help us as we dove into T-TEST. We created, and we had representation from every campus and from the administration building as we were looking at T-TEST and determining kind of what the evaluation system is about and how it differs from our current one. Okay, Marcy?
Okay, is this on? Okay.
Yes.
All right, so I'm just going to share a little bit about T-TEST, and I know Megan's going to jump in here as well. So in our committee, we did review the T-TEST system, Texas Teacher Evaluation Support System, and really the purpose of it is to really help teachers with their growth model in terms of their own professional growth and, of course, the impact on student learning. And so the T-TEST rubric, which you guys will see here in a minute and Megan will discuss further, really is a rubric that has various elements to it, such as planning, as well as instruction, and then the pieces that we see outside of the classroom, our professional responsibilities. There are components of goal setting, which we'll talk about briefly, and then, of course, the embedded student growth model. That is a very important aspect of it. That's why we're here, is to educate students, and so that's an important piece in the tool. So as we said, really T-TEST is intended to be an evaluation tool that is collaborative between the teacher and also the supervisor, so the principal or assistant principal, and it really provides feedback, direct feedback. It's based off of what's observed. So it's not just something that we just come up with. We really have to have data behind the ratings that we provide. So on that next slide, if you want to click over, whoever's clicking.
I'm clicking.
On the T-TEST components, if you go to the next one. So really, T-TEST is comprised of, you can go one more, is comprised of goal setting and professional development. And so what that looks like is essentially you would have two goals that you focus on as a teacher. You would have one goal that is professional development for you as an educator, something that you're growing in that of course is tied to student learning. And then you would have a specific student goal as part of that piece. And so that's really done at the beginning of the year where teachers they complete a self-evaluation and they rate themselves in all the domains, and then they come up with those professional goals with their principal. The other piece that is important is the evaluation cycle, and it is made up of 3 components. The first component is the pre-conference, which generally is a meeting that lasts about 15 to 30 minutes between the teacher and the principal, and they go over the lesson that's going to be observed. So typically they'll come out within a couple weeks after having that pre-conference. So in that meeting, they'll have, the principal will ask very specific questions about the lesson. So they'll have it together. They'll be sitting side by side and discussing the lesson and what the goals are for it and how they've come about with the lesson and how it, of course, is driven by the state text. The other piece, which is pretty common, and we'll talk about here as we compare the two, our current evaluation system and T-TEST, is the observation. So there is a formal 45-minute observation. Some districts will require a couple observations, but really you're required at least one 45-minute observation in which the principal comes in and observes the lesson that they already talked about in the pre-conference. And they essentially are scripting what's happening. So they're scripting what the students are saying and doing and what the teacher is saying and doing. So again, it's very data driven, very specific in terms of what is observed. And then after that, within the 10-day timeline, and of course, as soon as possible, the principal and the teacher will have a post-conference. So that's unique because that's not, we typically, when we're evaluated, yes, we follow up with the teacher, but as far as the evaluation cycle, it does look a little different than what we currently do. But in that meeting, essentially, they'll go over what was discussed at the pre-conference, what was observed, and then any areas that the teacher might have wanted the principal to review and look at, and then they'll discuss a refinement area and a reinforcement area for the teacher to proceed. And of course, we're evaluating throughout the year with walkthroughs as well, but that's essentially the evaluation cycle. And then, of course, the most important piece is the review of progress for student goals. So at the beginning of the year, when we set those goals, that is the focus of the observations. That's the focus of the year to make sure that we're hitting those targets in terms of the goals we've set for students. And so one of the pieces that's really important in the T-test component is the artifacts and evidence. As we mentioned, this is very evidence-based. And so really the teacher gets the opportunity to provide evidence, not just in that lesson period, that observation, but also they get to provide student work that maybe the principal didn't get a chance to see, or they could provide other evidence in terms of during their planning sessions with their team, or maybe things that they're doing outside of the classroom that is impacting the classroom. So that's essentially what it looks like.
Thank you, Miss Marcy. So moving on, again, my name is Megan Rollins. I'm the assistant principal at Hart Elementary and also a proud member of the T-Test Advisory Committee. And so I'm going to dig in a little bit now into our current Lovejoy ISD evaluation system, also known as the Lovejoy Appraisal Tool for Professional Growth and Development, or the LAT for PG&D. T-test just sounds, it just flows better, doesn't it? So anyway, currently, as you'll see up here, our Lovejoy evaluation system right now, or the LAT, was developed by a committee of educators. Some of them are still here in Lovejoy and some are not. So it needs a little revamping either way we look at it. It has 7 domains, and they're listed there. I won't read those all off for you. But if we'll go to the next slide, this slide gives an example of one of our domains, and that is a delivery of instruction. And so it shows the different rating areas where teachers can be rated with very specific descriptors of the action that the teacher's doing, the student's doing. This is all very teacher driven. And you'll notice that there are 4 of them. So either the teacher is proficient, which is a rating of a 3 in that specific domain, or they need improvement, do not meet the standard, or moving the other direction, it's a bright spot. So looking at the evaluation cycle on the next slide, the way that it works, and Marcy kind of touched on this, is the teacher completes a self-evaluation rubric, and then they work to plan a student learning objective and track data all year long on how their students are doing on that learning objective. Then there is a formal 45-minute observation, but also walkthroughs, formative walkthroughs throughout the year. Then a summative conference, reviewing all of those things, their reflection with their supervisor or their appraiser. And then the cycle kind of starts all over again the next year. So what we are proposing, this is kind of the T-test model. We have 7 domains currently, but in T-test, it is more condensed into just 4. None of the areas that are on our current appraisal tool are missed or omitted. This still covers all of it. The planning process, the instruction, the learning environment, and the professional practices and responsibilities cover everything that's on our current Lovejoy appraisal tool, just in a more succinct way. And finally, on the next slide, this is an example of the T-test. You'll notice it's in color. Our Lovejoy appraisal tool is only black and white. So this shows that there are, the 4 domains, but there are 1 to 5 dimensions within each domain. And that's what helps us to cover all of those areas that were covered in our Lovejoy appraisal tool, 7 domains. But what you'll notice is that there is that proficient rating still right there in the middle. But then there are 2 above and below: developing, improvement needed, and then accomplished and distinguished. So as Dr. Hambrick talked about, these are very much evidence-based. The T-test training for both teachers and the appraisers, all administrators, is very heavy in scripting. We're really taught to just script everything that the teacher is saying, everything the students are doing, so that we have a really deep understanding and can go back later and look and talk with the teacher about when you said this or when the students were doing this. It is very heavily evidence-based. So again, this is an example. This is from the instruction domain. It's dimension 2.2, and it says that the teacher uses content and pedagogical expertise to design and execute lessons aligned with state standards, related content, and student needs. So this is just one example. On the next slide, you'll see that the qualifiers, the words in like the improvement needed area range from like few to rarely. And then as you move up to developing, proficient, accomplished, it changes to words, those qualifiers like most, all, consistently. And there is an arrow. I think this is the most important part of the entire T-test appraisal tool. And that arrow shows that in the improvement needed column, it is student-centered actions. And then, oh, sorry, I'm backwards, teacher-centered actions. And as it moves towards distinguished, those are student-centered. So we want all of our classrooms, we want everything the teacher is doing, everything students are doing, all of the learning that's happening to be student-centered and not focused on the teacher. So, and again, here, there's an example. I won't read all of that to you, but it's an example of low quality evidence that I think some of us, some of the appraisers right now are probably used to doing, like, oh yeah, the teacher checked for understanding and then they modeled a problem. Well, you'll notice that paragraph on the bottom of this slide is much more detailed about exactly what the teacher's doing, exactly what the students are doing, so that we can really, really dive in to the appropriateness of the lesson and the effectiveness of the lesson and the learning that's taking place. So I am going to turn it over now back to Ms. Koenig for the rest.
One thing that we really do like about the T-test model is the calibration. So what that means is we have to go through training. Number one, you either have to be ILD trained or AEL trained. And you have to have a certificate, which is 3 days worth of training. And then you have to go to T-test training, and then you're tested. And the first 3 years, you're tested every year. And then finally, when you get older and you've been doing this a while, you get to test out every 3 years. But it really does work on the calibration. It shows you videos, like what happens is you will sit there and you'll watch a video, you'll script it, and you'll score it. And you have to pass it in order to be an appraiser. And I think this kind of levels the playing field and makes it very fair for teachers. So we don't have one appraiser that might be a little bit more lenient than another one. And so I think that also, as we look at teacher incentive allotment and the fairness, and if we start thinking about tying this to salary and those types of things, we want everyone calibrated. And so we would make sure, and this is just one way to ensure that we're calibrated among different schools. So, and scoring, and just that scoring accuracy. So it's pretty interesting. Also, as we get through here, it's definitely a growth model for teachers. One thing, it's kind of like you're proficient or you need improvement, where we know we have first year teachers that might not be, may not be there yet, but they're moving towards there with some support. So we don't want to discourage that either. And what are ways that we can help and support them? And in this model, a proficient teacher is a rock star teacher. Yes, we all want to be distinguished, but it's just that continuous improvement cycle. I think also, here in Lovejoy, this occurs quite a bit, but we focus on student outcomes, but we want them in charge of their learning and their interests. And we have so many opportunities here for kids that we can enhance learning. And that's more how the T-test is driven. We also, one thing that this will help us is right now, we have different, like we don't have a place to keep walkthroughs and evaluations and all those types of things. We would store all this in Eduphoria. We already have the program. I think most of us have used it in previous districts, everyone shaking their head, that because that's kind of what we use. So we'd be able to store the materials in one area. So when you go back and review walkthroughs and everything, it's already there. So I do think it'd be time saving for teachers. There's not going to be any more additional cost. And also this aligns directly with TPES, which what we'll be using with administrators, our assistant principal and principals, and of course our counselor evaluations. So all of it is more of a growth model. So we just wanted to present that to you tonight, so you could ask questions to any of us. We had a great committee. We asked some of them to volunteer. They were a little hesitant. I think y'all scared them a little bit maybe. So anyway, but Megan graciously volunteered. Questions for us?
Yes, one is, I know you asked the teachers that for feedback on moving to T-test. What was the feedback that you received from staff?
Well, I think, let me get into TIA and we can talk about that. And that's what we're going to move into.
I'd say
Okay,
that
and-
most of our
Yeah,
teachers
we're pretty
are
excited.
familiar with it, have heard of it, if not have used it in previous districts, some of our new
Yes.
hires. So, and it's aligned with our current, it's not like a completely
Complete
different
different, yeah.
spreadsheet kind of model they've never seen before. So I think they were pretty comfortable with this part of it.
And would this go into play like right now, or would it be a
No.
next year thing?
It'd be
Because
for
you have to do
next
the
year.
pre-conference and all that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it'd be for next year, definitely. So we, and, you know, we want to provide that training opportunity, and as we go out and do huddles, we'll be talking more about and getting more feedback from teachers. Most teachers that have been hired recently, I piloted this back in 2013 when it first came out, so it's been around for about 10 years.
So you want to transition into 21 now?
Yeah.
TIA? We're already
Let's
there
go.
anyway, right?
Let's go. Okay, TIA. I know we've talked a lot about TIA, and once again, it ties directly with our strategic plan. This was brought up, and if Amy was here, she was in my group, and we had talked about this in detail tonight there, but we're going to go on. I just want to talk to you a little bit about the teacher incentive allotment. It was established by House Bill 3 during the 86 legislative session. It's designed basically to reward teachers and top performers there. Basically, it says it can get teachers to a 6-figure salary, is what is touted there. And how it works is we would design a local designation system, okay? And our teachers, after we design that, they could reach a mastery level, exemplary, or recognized level, okay? We have to come up with a system, and then we share it. After we do this locally designed system, we share it with Texas Tech. They look at all of our information, they look at all the data, they look at our metrics, and then they determine if it's fair, okay? If it's valid. And then we would receive money. 90% of it has to go to the teacher compensation. We would receive that, or our campus would, or our district would. 10%, of course, can go to for other reasons, for compensation, you know, other types of things. The distinction, there's 2 ways to get it. There's a national board certification that they're able to get funds from, and that's if and that's for a recognized designation. So if you're nationally board certified, you're automatically, if someone moves in here and they already have nationally board certification, they automatically get it, okay? They already have the distinction. Or we can designate, come up with that LDS, that system, that local teacher design system, and go through that process in submitting an application to TEA, of course, with validation from Texas Tech. This is only for teachers. You have to be an 087. It's not for counselors, librarians, anyone else, because you're looking at growth of students and professional development, okay? Last year, we looked into this, and, you know, a year ago, we basically, Dr. Hambrick and I did some professional development in February when I first started in Lovejoy. We also worked with curriculum instruction, and we completed the application. You can only imagine the application is very difficult to complete because you have to all these components completed. Then, do y'all remember when we interviewed for the Strategic Compensation Fellowship and Grant interview? We did do that. We didn't get the grant because we also knew our evaluation system, as we felt the application, was not going to meet the validity from Texas Tech, okay? So, but we went ahead and we submitted to Cohort E the application. We did receive feedback from Texas Tech TIA. They gave us some things that we needed to work on. One of the things also that we need to establish is we also have student assessments, because we have to look at a student growth model and what are we using. Right now, we could possibly use, for some grades, we could use STAR. We don't have like benchmark testing and the metrics there to support that right now, but we're working on it. So, what we decided this past summer is we had all of our administrators currently are trained in T-TEST. If they had not been, everyone received training, and our principals also received training in T-TEST if they had not. So we did that this past summer. We formed a stakeholder committee and looked at T-TEST and teacher allotment. They met through, they had a couple of meetings, November and January, and then we went out and we shared with them. We did go ahead and submit for cohort F because that was due. We went and shared information for T-TEST and TIA, and we sent just a local survey that we created here to see what the interest level was. Okay, so when we talk about the interest, right now on the TIA website, they said there's 179 school districts receiving funds out of a total of 1025 school districts, which isn't a lot because the process is difficult. And I know my colleagues that I work with in other districts talk about it's a difficult process. It's a lot of work, and just creating, gathering the data, and and filling out the application and creating the system. It's going to be some time consuming. There are also 6,247 designated teachers in Texas out of about 400,000 currently, and that's what's on their website right now. I don't know when that's been updated, but I just wanted to share that with you. As far as our survey in February, we did do that. 67% of campus staff participated in the survey. 51% of those that completed the survey supported TIA, and 49% did not support it at that time. So the pros were, yes, it could lead to higher student performance because that's going to be a component of it. You look at student performance and teacher growth. It's good for recruitment and retention and potential increase in salary. The cons, they felt like it could be negative impact on morale, didn't support collaboration and professional learning communities, kind of what we've been working for. Some staff members will receive salaries, others may not. And if you have a team of 5, 4 may, 1 may not, that type of thing. Questioned if the effort was worth the compensation. And then the validity of student performance measures over many grades and subjects. Because what that means is, how are we going to look at progress in band and some of those fine arts? Because we would have to have either before and after post-tests, portfolios, there's no like hard line there. And so those were some of the concerns shared there. Kind of where we're going is what we're thinking is we're hoping to approve T-TEST, and that would be our first step in the evaluation system. We want to train our teachers in it, and also looking at SLOs, student learning objectives. They've currently been doing that, but this is going to be, just making sure that we've tightened that up. We also think that we can apply for, there's some grants out there for national board certification. And I know Dr. Hambrick and I applied to be a trainer of trainers, and that might be our best option right now, because if we have a band teacher that wants to be nationally board certified and they want to go through that training, they could. We're also looking for perhaps if we could do teacher reimbursements. It's pretty expensive to become a nationally board certified teacher. It's about $1,600, lasts for 5 years, and then you have to renew it. And I think it's about another $500 to keep renewing it. We're going to continue to work with our T-TEST TI committee to gather data and provide information to campuses. It's kind of where we're moving on from there. But just wanted to share that with you. If you have questions for me. Any questions?
So it would be possible to start down the route of looking at that national board certification without doing the
Correct.
second step of the more labor-intensive process?
Yes, we could, yes. The other thing is TIA, we would meet the definition of rural district because we would meet that definition. However, it is really designed for rural and low economic, low SES districts, And so I think, I think that's where the bulk of the money is probably going. Our kids are high performing, and so it's going to look a little bit different. We do think that they would receive, $3,000 to $4,000 on top of that, on top of their salary. Anything else?
I appreciate you looking at all these options for our teachers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ms. Koenig. Item 22, Staff Stakeholder Master Scheduling Committee update.
Thank you. I'm here to provide an update from some recent work that the committee has been conducting in regards to the 5 scheduling models, and the impact on the 3 areas are why, responding to revenue challenges, retaining the legacy of excellence for LISD students, and teacher staff retention and recruitment. And the 2 areas that I'm going to focus on this evening are the 7-period day, which impacts LHS and Willow Springs Middle School, and the additional staff planning days. So as you recall last time, when we looked at the response to revenue challenges of the 5 models, the 7-period day is the one that would have the most significant positive impact on some cost savings for the district. These are just some reminders that some benefits that the committee initially came up with. It would be an estimated savings of about $500,000, a little bit longer class periods. There would be fewer, the challenges would be fewer electives, fine arts and athletic classes, loss of 1 of the 2 daily staff planning periods. It could impact student morale with less electives, and then potential for combining some of your athletic periods. So you had asked for some additional information on some actual figures on what that would be, and talking with Dr. Zambezi and Mrs. Eldridge, just looking at not having students select courses yet. This is the best that we felt like we could come up with to give you some figures. That at the high school, we would project a reduction of FTEs of 4 to 5, with an estimated savings of $240,000 to $300,000. And then reductions at middle school would be 2 FTEs. That would be a good estimate, with the estimated savings of $120,000. The impact and implications from feedback I've received from both principals. It's some challenges with reduction. It would be hard to apply it equally across each department, because students have to complete the 4x4 model before they choose electives. So it's not knowing exactly what electives that would impact. Again, the reductions would most likely impact fine arts, visual arts electives, athletics, and specialized courses like world languages. We could not determine the additional cuts until we had actual student course selections completed. And then we would also have to make some revisions to some of our graduation requirements, plans, and pathways if we did go to a 7-period day at the high school. At Willow, some similar concerns or implications: reduction of students taking fine arts and elective and CTE courses. Right now, they're able to select 3 to 4 elective courses. We would have to reduce those choices. In some scenarios, an example might be the double blocked accelerated math. That would give fewer options for students that were enrolled in those courses. Also, it would take away the additional, they have 2 planning periods right now, so that would cut back their planning period to 42 to 45 minutes a day. So just as an update, as the committee's bringing this forward, as we noted, cost savings is the primary benefit to the 7-period day. We would strongly consider maintaining the current 8-period schedule at the high school and the middle school for 23-24. We would continue to monitor legislative actions regarding school finance and the impact on Lovejoy ISD. And then if we have any future funding limitations, we would have to look at we might have to reconsider it for some additional financial efficiencies. So at this time, I think the committee felt like that this was something that, based on information that we have at this time, that this would be something that it would help maintain the current level that we are offering our students. So any questions about 7-period before I move on to the next section? Okay. Then we looked at the additional staff planning days, and as you recall, this was one of the 2 that the committee felt like it would have the greatest impact on teacher, staff, recruitment, and retention. And when we talk about impact, the 4-day student school week was one of them. Those were the benefits to that model. This is not something we really are moving forward with. We're bringing you any additional information, but I just wanted to, as a reminder. And but looking at the additional staff planning days, it would hopefully accomplish some of the similar benefits to address teacher staff retention. And I think just considering the teacher workforce challenges we're having in our nation and state today, this is something that the committee felt like it was worth bringing forward. So I'm going to have Anna come up and talk a little bit about what this chart means, and this gives you a little bit more information on our current staff, and then I'll share a little bit more about some studies from the Commissioner's Teacher Vacancy Task Force and the Charles Butt Foundation.
This was really interesting. This was something the demographer shared with us. And as you can see, Lovejoy's outlined right there in red. And we just wanted to see where our staff was coming from. And quite a bit of them are coming from the Allen, maybe North Plano area there in Wiley. We did have quite a few, and we're just watching this, coming from the north. We actually have 13 staff members coming from Melissa, 20 coming from Anna, and about 32 kids coming from that area. So we're just kind of curious to see, if the 4-day work week is going to impact us, that they're doing up there. So that's just kind of what we're watching. We're going to continue, that's the demographer to, of course, update this so we can see where our staff's coming from, because we know our staff, they like to bring their kids here, and we like for them to do that, but we wanted to share that with you. But because we also know that with the challenges that we are having with staffing, that many of them do drive through. If they're coming from Anna, they're driving through Melissa, McKinney to get here. So just some information for you to look at.
And this is just a slide from the Charles Butts Foundation. This is a study. They've done some studies over the last several years of what were some of the retention strategies that districts were looking at. And they were surveying teachers over the years. And if you'll see, scheduling more time in your day for planning was some feedback. It was 85% of the teachers who considered that as very important. Just to note that the Commissioner's Teacher Vacancy Task Force, and I think Anna shared this earlier in the year, that their findings were in 2020 that 58% of current teachers were considering leaving the profession. 2 years later, in 22, 77% considered leaving the profession, and of those 77%, 93% were actively taking steps to do so. And we've been experiencing some of that even currently in our district, that we're seeing some teachers that they're not going to other districts. Some may be going to other districts that may be paying more or have some other benefits, but some are just leaving the profession for the flexibility and the pay. So those are just some things that we are really seriously dealing with at this time. So when we look at additional staff planning days, the committee was looking at the possibility of establishing some remote flexible teacher work days. And what that would mean, it would allow teachers time, not for professional development, because that would be different. Professional development is direct instruction to where we're building capacity with our staff. This is time for teachers to have, for them to either plan with their teams or work independently. I think the average number of hours that we're looking at teachers are working a week is a little over 60 hours a week in accomplishing all they need to do. So that's a significant amount of time outside of the workday. So how would we do this? We would adjust the 23-24 school calendar to reflect those remote flexible teacher work days. It would not impact the current calendar, start date, or end date and holidays. In comparison to a 4-day student instructional week, we'd have to move up the start date and have fewer holidays within the calendar. It would change approximately 8 to 13 student instructional days to remote flexible teacher work days. It would extend the school day for elementary, intermediate students, and estimated, if depending on how many days you built into your calendar, 10 to 25 minutes per day. Some feedback we've gotten from our principals, elementary principals on that. They felt like that time is needed because we do have some content areas that we are limited in. Social studies is an area that we struggle sometimes putting all of that in, and as you'll know, that's an area that our students, we're having to do some work on performance with their 8th grade scores on that, but also building in some additional intervention and enrichment time for students. We would back up some of the days, how they would be selected for the calendar would be very strategic based on periods of the year that it's a heavier workload time for our teachers, or also backing up to current school holidays, and that might help with the student attendance. Sometimes if we have a Monday holiday, we have families taking off on Friday. Also reducing the number of early release days. Those can be low attendance days for us, and that would give us additional instructional minutes, and repurpose those as remote flexible teacher work days. And then some of our existing professional development days, change some of those to remote. So that would not take away an instructional day from the student. So the ultimate impact, would allow teachers time for planning and preparation, and would support teacher staff recruitment and retention. It would address, that's additional staff planning days, would address, as I said, teacher staff recruitment and retention. It would remove some of the logistical challenges required with implementing a 4-day student instructional week, which we have learned talking with districts that have implemented it and further study of that model. It would minimize the number of minutes added to the school day compared to a 4-day student instructional week. It would require some modifications for the 23-24 school calendar, but again, it would not change the start or end date, and the holidays would remain intact. And then it would also mitigate a portion of the childcare needs for families and staff that would exist with the implementation of a 4-day student instructional week. We are also looking at childcare options that we could provide for our staff and for community on the days that would be those remote flex days for teachers, and then also adding some enrichment camps for our students as well too. So just looking at, again, the impact of the retaining the legacy of excellence for LISD students, what you'll find in many studies when you look at all 5 of these models, you'll have, some will show a loss or a gain, or it's a neutral gain with student achievement, but a lot of these studies do not correlate the teacher effectiveness. And that's what, when you look at research, it does, a bigger body of research does say that the teacher matters. This is some of John Hattie's work, and as you can see, the impact of the teacher compared to home, peers, schools, and principal has the greatest impact. And I don't think that's anything that any of us would disagree with. We know when there's a great teacher in the classroom and they're effective, it's going to positively impact student achievement. So there's some, just you're gonna find different opinions and debates on the studies there, but again, it's a factor of the teacher in the classroom. So next steps, we will reconvene as a committee. We are gonna have what we call campus team huddles. Those are staff information meetings that we have scheduled beginning the week after spring break through the 23rd of March. We're offering parent information meetings on the master scheduling. One is this Wednesday evening, and then the second one is on the 22nd, and it's a morning meeting. We are going to be having the Financial Sustainability Committee as well as the Lovejoy 2030 Strategic Planning Committee reconvene, and we'll be presenting some findings to those. So you will have parent and staff opportunities for input. And then we are planning to come forward with a preliminary recommendation update for the board on the 20th of March, and then administrative recommendations on the March 27th. And the reason for getting in front of this that we feel like is important is because of the teacher staff recruitment issue, because this is when teachers are going to start looking, and it's recruitment season. So questions?
I do. So similar to the calendar process that we went through when we adopted the current 23-24 calendar, there was more than one option that was presented, and there was an opportunity for parent feedback. Is that how you would envision this to go forward with this revision to the calendar?
Generally on the calendar, it's a recommendation that I'm not sure if we always get parent feedback on that. Kevin, can you confirm that? Was there a process we went through for the adoption of the 23-24? Yes.
And so when the recommendation comes to the board, will it be a single calendar, or will it be more than one option?
I think that's something we'll talk further about, and we can bring that forward, but it's certainly consideration we can take back to the committee. Yeah.
I'll certainly defer to my fellow trustees, but I'd be interested in seeing a different option, given the range that we're providing with 8 to 13 days or 10 to 25 minutes, what that option might look like. One other follow-up question is, we talked about the potential impact to attendance. How will this process dovetail with our attendance task force? Right, so as we take a look at some of these days being added on to the calendar, what would be the potential impact to attendance on those days? And then would we work in that are we assuming that attendance will be the same or will it increase with this change to the calendar?
We would hope we'd see an increase in attendance, because if we're looking at some of the days, the teacher flex days, or some of those days that we've seen historically, our attendance has not been very positive.
Last comment is just, there was an article in the Dallas Morning News this morning from 2 former superintendents that talked about their views on reduced instructional days, imploring school boards to take a look at what the potential impact would be to students. So what would you recommend this board to consider from a data perspective on the impact of instructional day changes for our Lovejoy students?
I think when we go back, it's the correlation to the classroom teacher. As I said, you're going to find differing opinions, and the data doesn't distinguish it significantly one side or the other. As you'll see, those studies do not correlate the teacher.
So the districts that have tried this, and they're seeing research coming out where there was a detrimental effect to the students, you're saying we shouldn't expect to see the same thing just because our teachers are better? Am I understanding what you're saying?
No, I don't think that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that when you look at the studies, because if you look at, we've talked to some districts, that there was a district we talked to that they actually saw their student scores go up, and they saw their teacher retention rates go up. However, you're kind of comparing apples to oranges, because there are different demographics in these various districts, and different locations as well too. So again, it's really, I think you're going to have to look at multiple factors that impact the student achievement in the classroom. Number one, we want a teacher in the classroom. And if we're dealing to where we cannot put a teacher in the classroom because we can't recruit them, that's going to be problematic. Again, I think some of this is we're projecting kind of with the future, what we hope. It's very new. This is a very new challenge to us as educators, that we're dealing with this, the workforce that we're dealing with right now in teacher recruitment and retention. So some of these factors are just going to be unknown.
So when we adopted the 23-24 calendar, over the years, we've added quite a few early release days and additional professional development days. We have more 3-day weekends now than I know we did years ago for that reason. We also added a fall break, and one of the big arguments for that was teacher retention and recruitment. We moved up our start date because of recruitment considerations. I looked at slide 259 in your presentation, and one thing that jumped out at me, it did say that scheduling considerations were important at 85%, but the number one item on that list was what's important to teachers is a positive work culture and environment at 97%. And I think we have that here. I think we can keep getting better. Before we start contemplating things that are potentially detrimental to our students, I'd like to make sure that we're doing everything we can to continue that legacy of excellence when it comes to the culture and the environment. And if we have other ideas, I want to make sure we're looking at those too.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, I thought of another thing. Two more things, I promise I'll be fast. So one of the other questions I have, I think that building time for teachers, that is literally time in the calendar, is good. Are there other things that we ask of our teachers that are taking their time, that are building to that 60 hours a week, that we are also evaluating if we can pull those off of their plate?
I think our principals have been very conscientious of time and when they're pulling their teachers, but also that can also compromise getting information to them. And so in fact, we talked about this morning at cabinet with our principals that sometimes we're not pulling them close enough to be able to get the correct information out to them because we're trying so hard to limit those meetings and that concentrated time, and we're protecting their time. So I think there's a balance, and they are trying to do the best that they can with it. But I also think that when we're looking at the mandates that are being put on our teachers, the additional, and we've had to, the House Bill 4545 was a significant impact for our teachers. That's an additional planning measure that they're required to do because you have to do that outside of that instructional period there. So I think as a whole, we've been super conscientious about how we're asking teachers to use their time. We did make some adjustments to our professional development days that we had scheduled this month. Rather than having professional direct time, we gave those teachers back time on their campus. So again, we're looking for those opportunities, but the work is still there. It's not going away. And it's still got to be completed. So I think that's just what, and you're talking with teachers when they have a 45 or 50-minute planning time to answer emails, return phone calls, plan with their team. At elementary, you're planning multiple subjects. At secondary, you're planning multiple classes as well. And then on top of that, required meetings that they're required to attend. So it's a balance. So I think that our principals are going to be at these parent meetings and meetings with the campuses and financial sustainability and the Lovejoy 2030. And I think they can speak to some of this because they're on boots on the ground experiencing and seeing what the impact it's having on teachers.
Very last comment. I know this is a detailed question and you're not all the way there yet, but I'll be interested to hear around those additional daycare options or enrichment camps, what that would look like for our children who receive special education services.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Tinsley. All right. Item 23 would be our cabinet reports.
Good evening once again, President Owens, esteemed board members, and Superintendent Cordell. I know it's late in the evening, and so I will be brief, but just some real quick facts on your monthly financial statements, again, because it's on the consent agenda, which very similar to what you saw last month. Historically, we would have spent about 55% of our budget through January, and currently we're at 53%, so that's a good trend. We made our second payment of two payments that we make for our debt service, the principal and interest, on February the 15th, about $15.5 million. And the reason why I point that out is because of that amount, $3.2 million was an early call redemption, and you'll have many opportunities to continue to do this to save substantial amounts of interest because one, you have callable debt. You have to have callable debt to begin with. And two, you have a reduction in your principal and interest payment in some of the upcoming years. Unfortunately, right now, we don't have any refunding opportunities because of the way the market is. Tax collections, got a separate slide. I just want to give you a little bit more detailed update in a minute, but there's some just data similar to last month. And then, of course, the Lovejoy Scholars, the rental and transportation fees, we have a little bit more of an increase over last month. And then, of course, we just adopted the budget amendment number 2 to reflect that as, part of our budget that will increase our fund balance. So at the end of January, we had 237 days of cash on hand. But the interesting part that I wanted to call your attention, that I thought was a little bit unusual is that we're behind in our collection. So even though we've collected more money percentage-wise to what's in the budget or certified, the collections currently are at 81.77% through the end of January. And in the prior year, it was at 84.51%. It's a little over 2.7% variance. So the original tax levy, both M&O and INS, was about $50 million. And supplemental adjustments to date are $1.2 million. So our tax levy increased because of some supplementals. And I had mentioned this in the past of why our certified roll tax value might be different than what the Central Appraisal District sends down to the state comptroller's office, is because a lot of our supplements are worked later in the year, adding on new properties, ARBs, things that when the values were certified, the appraisers haven't had it all worked in there. So that gave us a revised tax levy of about $51.2 million. And the remaining levy at the end of January was a little over $10.3 million. But I will say, based on collections that we've received and have been deposited in the bank as of February the 22nd, another $7.6 million came in. And just to remind you, our taxes become delinquent on February 1st. So I thought that was quite unusual. So I went back and did a little research. The penalty for paying late is only 2%. Now, it does accrue on top of that 2% every month. So if you pay it in March, that's 4%. But I'm assuming that our taxpayers are thinking of possibly holding on to their investments now that the interest rate and environments have increased. It doesn't help us in the school district by any means, but I guess if you can earn 3.5% or so on your investments, but only have to pay 2%, you're ahead of the game. But thank goodness, we hope that by the end of the February, we'll get right back on track. But as you know, interest rates have changed quite a bit in prior years. So just a little interesting tidbit for you. And that's all I have for this evening.
I had one minor point of clarification or question. I thought I saw in our consent agenda finance report that we approved earlier that it said historically we would have been at 47 versus 53, but your presentation here says 55 versus 53. I might not be looking at the right thing.
Let me ask Thomas, because that information came from his
You can
analysis.
clarify for me later, but I was just confused.
Okay.
confused
Just
about it.
follow up with you on that,
Thank you.
certainly. Okay, I'll let Superintendent Cordell know that response. Anything else?
Okay, the board update for the C&I department is curriculum writing. We conduct summer curriculum writing for 3 days during the summer, and that's where we bring in staff members who are representing all content areas, all grade levels, courses, to assist in developing our curriculum documents that our teachers are using throughout the year. So as you see here, it involves core content area teachers, GT, special education teachers, CTE teachers, and elective teachers. We also include our librarians, our C&I directors and coordinators are leading this work. One of the things, our teachers are compensated for this. The past couple summers, we've had some trouble recruiting teachers to do this, so we've increased our hourly rate, hoping that we can recruit some more of our staff to help us, because we really, it's valuable to have their input and insight because of the trials and errors that they're making as they deliver the standards throughout the year. We are also going to be offering free childcare for our teachers who are working, so hopefully that's going to improve some recruitment efforts with this. The goal of curriculum writing is to ensure that we design a coherent, guaranteed, and viable curriculum that stands over time. We prioritize our essential standards, our texts. So that means that we look at what are the areas that there's hundreds of texts, but we look at that and we identify the priority ones that we feel like our kids need the most here in Lovejoy. A curriculum helps us to ensure that we're moving in the same direction by developing pacing guides or scope and sequences. So that's kind of a calendar of when you teach what standard at what time during the year. We build our assessment plans into the curricular documents to support how we progress monitor student progress. We embed those instructional resources that I was talking about earlier, where they fit in. And we also put in what we are looking at, what we call exemplar lessons. So this would be a model lesson that we would want. So that it creates equity across all classrooms and grade levels. And then overall, this really provides a roadmap for teaching and learning. And we're really committed to creating some very robust documents to help some time-saving efforts for our teachers as well, too. So we are in the process right now of getting this organized. And if you want to see teachers in action, come up here the week after school. We're here in the library, and there's a lot of great work going on. So. This mouse doesn't work for me.
I know it doesn't work. Okay. First of all, one of the things that we also talked about in our strategic plan, Lovejoy 2030, was working with our alumni and celebrating their successes. And we have a lot of alumni that have done some great things. And are the first one, so we put out some information, connect with Katie. We shared it with some of the Sarah Brown, and who works with our Alumni Association, and wanted to have them fill out a questionnaire. And then this past Connect with Katie, we spotlighted Morgan Riddle. I kind of wanted someone to get it going. And so I went to Michelle and said, hey, and so she kind of forced her daughter to do it. So anyway, she's class of 2017. And anyway, there, and there's her sister there also. But just wanted to let you know that we're super excited to celebrate our alumni, and we're gonna continue to do that. So share it with everyone you know, so we can get more of them out there, and they've done some great things. So very engaging things. The other thing we have coming up is Kindergarten Roundup. And so if you know a kindergartner, anyone that will be 5 by September 1st, please, please, please have them register. There's some QR codes there. Also, we have sneak peek March 21st at Hart. We have March 23rd at Puster. This is the class of 2036. Can you believe it? Hard to believe. I mean, like, gosh, can't even believe we're saying that. Something else I just wanted to share just quickly. This past weekend, we had our first job fair of the year. And everyone that was there, would y'all stand up? We had principals there, we had Marcy, Aaron, all of our principals and stuff. We were so excited. At Sancy at 9 a.m. We had someone actually come in at like 8:55. We received 41 resumes. We talked to a lot of people, some really great teachers there. I think Matt back there is looking at 5 people, 2 bus drivers also. So we're super, super excited. It was just a day of celebration. I think we were all worried because the weather was bad, and we weren't anticipating the turnout we had, but it was a great turnout. So we're super excited about getting ready to get recruiting and sharing all the great things Lovejoy has to do. So. Oh, did I skip Sancy? Sorry, Sancy.
Anna was really excited,
I was
so
really
I
excited about the
decided
job
I
fair.
did not want to burst her bubble.
You met a special ed candidate.
I accommodated for her tonight, and so absolutely, we love her. Wanted to give you guys an update of just really the hard work, and you heard Dr. Tinsley talk about the impact that teachers have in the classroom for students. And one of our special education coordinators came across this quote, and I thought it was very a great reminder of just really capacity building is what we do, regardless if you've been in the business for 30 years or this is your first year. And so we get the opportunity in our case manager meetings, and they're most of the time once a week. And we started the school year out where they were mandatory and really trying to lay some nice baseline foundation for either existing staff or new staff that may be experienced but coming to Lovejoy, new teachers to special education but had previously taught general education. So we really have a wide array of staff members that are in there. And as we've moved
further in the year, the case manager meetings, most of them are optional. We'd still have some that are mandatory, but the campus administrators and the case managers know on the front end what we're discussing. So that gives them an opportunity to really self-reflect. Is this an area that I feel like I'm grounded in very well, or do I need to sharpen my skills? The nice piece, not only is it provided by either staff here at admin, we also have brought in some staff from Region 10 that covered some of the transition areas for us. Our assessment staff came in and provided additional support around full and individual evaluations and assessments, and really that tied to what they're doing on the evaluation side to the impact in the classroom. So you can see our focus for February as we get into the spring. Sometimes we do see a little uptick in behavior, so definitely being proactive and what are we doing to gather and be proactive in supporting behavior and social skill needs. And then in March, continuing to sharpen skills around data collection, because there's a plethora of ways that you can collect data, and so helping staff find the one that works for them with everything else that they have going on in the classroom, to still gathering instructional and behavioral data. Our ARD packet supplement, so if you've never had the opportunity to sit in an ARD meeting and it feels like you are signing off for a house. There's a lot of paperwork. It's all tied to legal mandates, and there's, in addition to the basic ARD packet, there are supplements depending on the student and what supports that they may need. And so a case manager may not all of the students on their caseload use a supplement, so they could get rusty. And so making sure that we keep them, their skills sharpened around ARD packet supplements. And then definitely in May, that successful student transition to next grade level, whether that be within the same campus or if they're leaving a campus going into, like from Sloan Creek to Middle, making sure that that transition is smooth, and that the case manager that had the student this current year is sharing that wealth of information to the receiving grade level or receiving campus to be able to pick that plan up and run. We also had on the 15th with our fabulous campus administrators, and it was our first lunch, learn and share, and we really had the opportunity, because we did it remote, we were able to have campus administrators and assistant principals, again, to continue to share the things that are going well or some of the practices they have, and then shore up any questions that they did have. So we really went through the ARD process and really tied it to the legal references, which again, when I talked about the paperwork, it's all tied to the regs that we are required to provide. And I normally say, generally when you're doing the right things for students, we're hitting all of those marks, but we want to make sure that, again, make that baseline that everybody understands the process and their role as they're in the meeting. Our next topic will be based off the requests from the campus administrators, shoring up their skills around deliberations, whether that's in a special education ARD meeting or a Section 504 meeting or a PST meeting, just making sure that they're clear on what's the deliberations that they want to take. It's not a word for word, but how do we get a synopsis of that meeting so whoever receives a student next year can kind of have a glimpse of what was discussed in the meeting. And then our Dyslexia Therapist Training Center, we are actually have registration open now, and we're starting to interview potential candidates that are wanting to go through our 2-year program. The intro course starts in the summer. It's a week long, and then there's follow-up sessions that anyone who is in that program has to go through during the school year. The second year is the advanced training, and really they're all working towards becoming a certified academic language therapist. So we do have some staff members that are from within district that are wanting to attend, but we also provide that to teachers to other district, which is a revenue generator for us. We charge, let me make sure I'm telling you correctly. So for the first year, we charge $3,500 for the basic initial course, and for the second year, we charge $2,500 per participant. So if you know of anyone, Anna's was shaking the tree for kindergartners. I'm shaking the tree if we have anybody who's interested in becoming a certified academic language therapist. And that's really a pretty high demand area with some of the changes with the dyslexia handbook and how dyslexia is being evaluated and provided. Districts are having to broaden their lens of getting more therapists trained for their school districts. Questions?
Just have a couple of updates for student services. The first, as I'd mentioned earlier, is our attendance task force. We met last Tuesday for our meeting for our third quarter, so our third meeting of the year. If you'll remember the first meeting, we really went over just what are the different types of absences that we have and the reasons why we keep absences, or those three types of absences. The second meeting towards the end of the first semester was really the trends that we were seeing. Two of those trends were really absences on Fridays and absences before holidays. Those were two of the trends at that time that we saw the kind of a dip in our attendance and our average daily attendance, and we're still seeing those. And so this third attendance task force meeting, we looked at, number one, where are we right now through February 16th with our average daily attendance? And you can see with this line graph, the green line is our district average. It obviously runs through the middle of the chart. But really, it's really hard to see. But at the end, you can see we've kind of leveled out, and we're starting to make a little bit of a comeback. And we're down, if you'll remember, I know you do, our budget for this year was built off of a 95.5 ADA. We're hovering right around the 95.88, 95.91 mark. That's kind of the window where we're moving back and forth to. From right now, it's really hard to move that needle too far just because we're so late in the year. It takes a lot to move those. However, when we have, I want to come back to this, when we have days like our early release days, and I think you alluded to that or had a question about that, Ms. McLaughlin, earlier. Our early release dates are really a struggle for us. Our October 21st early release date, our ADA was well below the 95.5. It was 92.83. Our just most recent February 16th day was 92.89. As you can imagine, our December 15th early release day is very well attended because we have finals at secondary and we have Christmas parties at the elementary. Yeah. So for whatever reason, whether you want to be there or you have to, everybody came on December 15th. And then, let's see, well, I don't have a slide for it, but the Monday after, when we had to make up the weather day, it was just above 90%. So that day, we really took a hit on that day as well. So those 3 days really, the first early release, the most recent early release, and then the bad weather makeup day, those were pretty rough days for us on the attendance side of things. One of the things that we have implemented since the beginning of the semester was this chart that we're putting in weekly principal communication. I'm sure you've seen this. But each week we're putting in just what the change is from week to week, from campus to campus. We also implemented a little color scheme here, where the red means that that campus has slightly has declined from the previous week. The green, it means that we've increased since the previous week, and obviously yellow means that we've not changed at all. And so you can see there we've had 2 reds and 2 greens that have really kind of canceled each other out. So there's not been much change over the week prior to February 16th. I think the colors provide a little bit of friendly competition between the principals. They're a little bit competitive. They like to see more green than they do red or yellow. So, but again, it gives the community a good visual of how we are trending, what our numbers are, and really how much of an impact our attendance has. A lot of the attendance committee, even though we talk about attendance obviously a lot, that's all we talk about with them, they still don't understand really why. One of their questions is why are we talking so much about attendance in schools like Plano or Melissa, they're not talking about attendance as much because Ashley Matting, our PEMS coordinator, gave us the numbers that their attendance for this year is really around 94%. So it's well below ours. But the difference is they have so many more layers of funding than we do, that we just don't get the funding that they get. And so that's why really our main source of funding comes from attendance. So they have other things that can kind of absorb their lack of attendance that we just don't have those buffers for. And so that was, again, something that we continue to talk about. What a year of difference makes. If you look at February 2022 as opposed to 2023, and I know that there are some variables such as COVID we were coming out of, but still the point being is we've increased by almost 2 percentage points our attendance from last year to this year, which I think that we've talked about in the past, how much a percentage point really means to us funding wise. And really our recommendations coming out of the committee, this last one, were really to develop some attendance incentives and ensure engaging lessons. So especially on Fridays, on early release days, still making sure that the learning continues, that we don't just quote unquote take a day off just because we're about to go into a long weekend or we're about to go on a vacation, to make sure that our teachers and which that we ensure that the learning continues. Any questions about the attendance committee? We'll have one more meeting, and then we'll look, of course, it'll give us a whole year's worth of data that we can look at, and then also some of the things that we want to carry into the next school year.
Can, at some point, maybe in a future presentation, help me better understand the reasoning behind having early release days at all?
Absolutely. I can tell you right now that I mean, if you want me to wait, I can, but no, it's okay. The first one really is Leopard Friday, because there's so many activities in the afternoons of Leopard Friday, and there's so much going on just to give students and staff time, especially at campuses other than the high school, to get over and set up because it's so involved for our entire community. That was the first one. Of course, we have an early release going into Christmas break, which is the one that's really well attended. February 16th is going into what we kind of call our winter break, which is a long weekend. And then we'll have one again, our last day of school, which will not be well attended, the last day of school. So those are really the four, I think that's 4 days that we have early releases on. And so 3 out of those 4 are gonna really hit us hard on the attendance front. Wanted to give you just an update that you may not be aware of on our tennis courts. Allen ISD has closed, and a lot of schools are starting to do this, closing their tennis courts because they realize, number one, that the wear and tear on the tennis courts, the playing surface, the nets, the fencing, all of those things are taking a toll, obviously, with the more traffic that comes through there, which when bonds were passed to be able to support maybe improving the wear and tear, that wasn't such a problem. But now the trend is that a lot of bonds are not passing to support facilities such as stadiums, athletic facilities, whatnot. So in order to preserve the tennis courts and other really athletic venues, they are limiting the access to those sites, if you will. And so some of the concerns that we have, and we have seen, especially since Allen ISD has closed theirs, is we're seeing an increase in public usage during our school day, which causes a safety concern, of course, and that's both at Willow Springs and at Lovejoy High School. There's an increased demand for court space, like we mentioned, since the neighboring school districts have closed their courts. There's a growing popularity, not with myself, but maybe with you, of pickleball. And there's also a lot of litter being left on the courts. Our grounds crew, even our head tennis coach, are picking up trash every morning, beer bottles on our courts that just are because of the increased traffic and whatever other reasons, but it is a concern that we have. And so some of the things that we'll be looking at, number one, is locking our, potentially, we'll continue to have this discussion, but potentially limiting access during the school day. That's more for a safety reason. We don't allow anybody on our campuses during the school day for any reason, and we shouldn't really for tennis court usage either. And then, of course, what our access looks like in the evening hours because of wear and tear and just really the lack of taking care of our facilities in the evening. So those are some of the things that we're looking at. Yep. Yeah, we can start that immediately. That would, of course. There have been times when our coaches have gone out to have practice and they've had to ask people to get off the court so our teams can practice. So that's again, people using them during the day and the increased traffic.
So you did that. How would that work for a local tennis player that wants to practice on the weekend or in the evening? If they want that, you would be able to.
We can always give access. I mean, that's not the issue. The issue is making it, we can say we're going to open it up to our tennis team between 12 and 4 on a Saturday.
I just don't want those kids.
Absolutely. Yeah. It would just be more controlled. It would just be more controlled and our team would know when it's available, but Collin County would know when it's available. Right. Right. We would never want to limit our kids to that. Yep. Any questions?
All right, Ms. Cordell, are you ready?
I am, thank you. I've got a couple things. First, being that, wanted to share that I've been here 21 months now, and it's been absolutely incredible. We all know how uniquely special Lovejoy ISD is, but it has not been easy. Financial challenges, and then of course, post-COVID, with some of the challenges our teachers and our staff is facing. And so I just want to extend a very heartfelt, deep thank you to both our district leaders, our campus leaders. We've got a lot of those leaders in the back of the room here and over to the side, as well as our teachers who've served on committees, put in extra time to figure it out. All of us are united in our commitment to our students learning at high levels and having a remarkable experience. We are in unprecedented times, and sometimes the people that I get the privilege of working with on a daily basis make it look to our community like it's a lot easier than it is. I can tell you the amount of personal time, the amount of thought and heart that they put into this, the amount of worry and research and consideration is deep, and it is great, and it is weighed very heavily. And so I just want you to know that some of the very fortunate experiences that we've been able to continue for our kids in Lovejoy ISD is because of the campus and district leaders that are doing this brave and courageous work in this environment. So I just ask that we all keep that in mind as we try to work together to figure these things out for our kids. We're all united in that. And then also want to lift up and celebrate, again, one of the things that makes us uniquely special as a community. I know many of us got to participate in a parade last week for Carter Dubois, who turned 7. And it was a very special day because Carter was home from the hospital for a very limited amount of time. And this all happened at the last minute. And to have the number of teachers and parents and kids, big and small kids, kids in kindergarten all the way up to high school, it was absolutely moving and was certainly the best of us, that we come out in a big way to love and support each other. And I know our love and our prayers continue for the Dubois family and for Carter. And I just want to thank everybody who made that happen. It was extremely humbling.
Thank you, Ms. Cordell, for that. Next item is public comments for non-agenda items. And just want to share with the community again, legislatively enjoyed the visit to the Capitol, the opportunity to visit with some of our representatives. I'd encourage each of you to read between the lines and listen to what's being said and what's not being said, and to use your intuition to understand what is happening with some of these bills, the language being written, the purpose that's being written, and what the unintended consequences are to some of these things. It's not exactly stated. I'm not sure they either do know it or don't know it, or maybe they don't want to say it. But it's something that's concerning, and it's something that we need to pay attention to as a community as we evaluate things, we think about things we're doing. The other thing is I want to say, to the same note, thank you to Ms. Cordell and her administrative leadership team for the time, heart, the effort that goes into the work they're doing, the hours being put in as well. As you mentioned for your team, it's very much a leadership thing, and so grateful for the things that don't get noticed as much and or do, but maybe not talked about. So thank you for the work being put in and what's happening. And then thank you for our board here serving and all the work they're doing as well. Appreciate the hard work and the heart going in to serve our students first and foremost. So hope you all have a great evening. Thanks for being here and staying with us.